Freaking good morning, everyone. Yeah, I've been having some problems connecting it as well. So I was about 5 minutes late, but it ended up being 15 minutes late because I've been having problems getting onto StreamYard itself. Just show you my screen. As you can see, I've been getting an error message right here. An error occurred. Wait a moment and then try again. So if it goes down through the stream or whatever, just be patient. One thing about, unlike Restream that actually just finishes off the stream and that's it, and then I have to start up something new, which I won't. With StreamYard, I can come back in. So I could potentially be knocked out today because it's not actually working really well, which is annoying. Shit happens. So hopefully it's just the momentary initial stage, but I was late. But then StreamYard made me even later. So it's a combined apology. They're not going to give you an apology, but I'll give it on behalf of them. Thanks, Jared. And Orthodox Easter stream. What a pleasant surprise. Exactly. Harry Doc's Easter. Ice cream again. Yeah, well, that would be a good excuse, actually. That would be a good excuse. Yes, that's me. Now imagine Harry saying that between mouthfuls of ice cream. Yes. Holding. Oh, hello, Kitty, responsible. No, she's not responsible. At her own home, hiding. She's probably basically binging on the food that I gave her yesterday when we came back from Dad's place. Dad always piles on the food, and so she actually did Orthodox Easter with us. Others were elsewhere in the state or interstate, to be more precise. So we didn't have as many this year. So more food for me and Hello Kitty to take home with us. So got enough meat for a couple of days. So and she's got enough meat probably with the amount she eats for probably a week. So she's fine. A big spoon digging into the bowl. That would actually be a nice thing if I was actually doing that rather than actually frustratingly trying to get online. Oh, thanks, Gary. Thanks, Gary. It's always a pleasure, mate. And 1 minute, which became 5 minutes. Richard, good to see you, mate. Yeah, I know. I'll have to do some duties later. It's been a funny day, actually. It's been a bit of an overcast outside. There's no sun coming through the wind. Well, there's a bit of light coming in, but it's not intense. Like, there's a bit of an overcast. There's a bit of a grubby little day. So it's not the most pleasant day in Hobart. Yes, I'll spank myself as well. I'll enjoy that. G'day, Deborah. Harut, good to see you. Thank you, mate. Thank you. Appreciate it. Not a problem. I sent you an email. Simple. The precursors are in meat. You don't need to supplement. We supplement far too many things. We don't need to, If you're eating plenty of meat, Sammy, you'll get more than enough of all the precursors that we need and all that. There are some people that may need a bit of assistance with choline and taurine, for a whole lot of reasons, which I've discussed multiple times. But yeah, let's try and, there are times when we need to basically resulfonate ourselves to a certain level. There are times when you need to, I can't remember the actual, off the top of my head, the actual genetic SNP, which has got the TT alleles, which tends to make you more vulnerable to having a slower rate at which you transport fat out of the liver, which if you're not getting enough choline from the diet, then it can be a problem. But if you're getting enough, it's more that I usually recommend people that are under eating protein, they probably should supplement 1 gram at least of choline, but most people probably don't need to. And it's only people with that specific genetic, which is a very small percentage of the population, so it's not a vast amount of people. It varies between populations. Some societies have very low, a couple of percentage points, and others have up to 10, 15%. It depends on the society, the different ethnic groups around the world that have different. I mean, the Han Chinese have the lowest requirement because they've got a lot of endogenous capacity. But I've discussed that many times. Yeah, so it's like anything, we probably overdo the supplements. Max, good to see you, mate. G'day, Bo. I've been receiving a whole heap of old Blue Zone videos with old lying mate Butner. Oh, look, there's plenty of stuff out there. I even talk about like the Costa Rica, the Nagoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. Just grab just actually grab, a Google map, go over it. You'll see how dry it is and how it's very much cattle country, and then just drop into the actual area, not in the towns, but in the area, and look at what's around. It's all cattle. It's all animal, I remember seeing a video of one guy that basically somebody sent me a while back, and there was basically a guy that was in his 90s and riding around on a horse, 93 I think, but riding around on a horse, moving cattle around. I mean, these guys are pastoralists. They're not basically, even Grundy admitted that, these people are pastoralists. We know the same thing happens in Ikaria. The people up in the hillsides, which are pastoralists, are eating animal foods and all that, maybe a bit of green veg, which is seasonal, and a bit of fruit, which is seasonal, but primarily are eating, meat, dairy-based, that's what they're doing primarily, which you could say with some seasonal cheating of some sugar that's available seasonally. That's the ones that everybody visits are the ones that are around the touristy areas around the coastline. Well, those people are basically not doing the diet that those pastoralists are doing. I mean, give us a break. But this is the sort of propaganda, so it's unreliable. I mean, I say to people, go there and see with your own eyes. It's like Mary Ruddock went to Ikaria, went up into the areas where she actually went to tombstones and looked at these people that had ages over 100, and she saw all these people in this this hilly area in the center of the sort of the island, all these pastoralists. A lot of them didn't even eat fish. They just ate dairy and meat of their own animals. It's just bullshit. It's just another bullshit, a different day. If somebody wants to find the truth, they can find it. If somebody basically just wants to reinforce the same propaganda, they'll reinforce the same propaganda. It's just humans lie. As I say, don't trust anyone. Don't even trust me. Don't trust anyone. Go and see for yourself if you really want to see. Like Mary did. She was a vegetarian. She went, she saw, and she went, oh, and then looked at the studies. Can you imagine now? Every person on the planet knows Greeks love feta cheese. Every person. Can you imagine there wasn't even a section in that study, that Blue Zone study on Ikaria, there wasn't even a section for even feta cheese, let alone dairy. How ridiculous that is? There was no section for any of the dairy. So how, it's all these plants and meat. That was it. What a load of bullshit. And we know meat translates in Greece to beef. So all the other animals were excluded. And we know they consume very little because they have to import it, and it's costly to import it to the island. Islanders are basically sheep and goats. That's it, and maybe a bit of coastal fish. It's just ridiculous. Yes, unfortunately, the propaganda is strong out there. Thank you, Elizabeth. Harry, distilled reverse osmosis or high altitude. High altitude glacial water. That's the one I'd choose because it's lowering deuterium. Reverse osmosis is just basically getting rid of particulates or whatever. And distilled, similar sort of concept. It's really, what is the elevation of that? That will give you the fractionation of the deuterium content of that water. So the higher, the lower the deuterium due to UV, the lower. And also the same thing with rainwater. Rainwater is very low. It's actually lower than alpine water. So if you've got the ability to capture rainwater in a tank, that would be the lowest deuterium water you could actually get from nature, because it's coming from higher elevation, especially if it's coming from cloud cover, which much higher, which is higher than, we're talking about glacial water, and so that will be the absolute best. But when it comes to rainwater, it's very hard. I think I've seen in my life one rainwater product. And when I did a bit of research, I wasn't even sure whether it's actually, diluted or real rainwater or stuff. Hard to know with those sort of things. But I would say, your best is rainwater. If you can capture it, if you've got the capacity, that means you're set up. You're in a rural area and you've set up to be able to capture rainwater. If you can't, that the next best thing is the higher the elevation. That's why the water coming from the alpine regions of Italy, which are slightly lower, is 149 parts per million. And the stuff coming from the higher elevations, which is in the French Alps, is about 146, so 3 parts per million less. So, obviously, when you look at the Himalayas, where the Tibetan people are, which is even higher, the water there, the glacial water there, is even lower. It's down into the 140 type, the low 140s, and in some areas even 138, which is getting very close to that of fat. So you can understand now these people are using that water for their plants and for their animals, and they're actually lowering the deuterium threshold. It's not surprising that there are so many centenarians amongst themselves, because they're on low deuterium sources of water, both from animal fat and from direct water. So it makes a big difference. It's something that all these so-called blue zone sort of aficionados have no freaking idea about. So yeah, they make a whole lot of assumptions about a whole lot of things because they can't laterally think. So, it's for them, it's sort of all this reductionist thinking, this sort of narrow band thinking, as I call it. Yes. It's usually low IQ people that want to act smart to other people. Anyway, Harry, why are people used to say that taurine in drinks like Red Bull are dangerous for people? That's just because, remember I did the video on insomnia recently? What it does is that the industry, they've actually learned that if you put a small amount of taurine in a drink with a lot of caffeine, it magnifies the effect of the caffeine. So it's actually magnifying the effect of the caffeine. And if some people have an inability, like they've got the genetics where they can't basically detox caffeine out of their system, their liver doesn't have the right genetics. I've got genes that are very high detox that can clear at 4 times the speed or time, and so I can clear it out of the system. So if I had a couple of Red Bulls, it wouldn't affect me as much. Somebody has the wrong genetics, then they can actually have a more magnified effect of, and that could be deleterious to their health. so very high heart rate and a lot of other issues. So it's the reason why I made that video about insomnia and carnivores, to explain that some people can actually have this magnified effect with small amounts of taurine, which they're getting from the meat, and then they have a lot of caffeine in their diet, and that it magnifies that effect. So you can overcome that with more taurine supplementation. But if you're just getting a small amount, the much lower threshold you're getting from meat, in particular meat, which is supermarket meat, which gets hung and it loses a lot through the fluids when it gets hung. It's not like freshly slaughtered like a tribal person would do and drink all the actual fluids, which that's where all the, it's in the fluids where all the taurine is. Yeah, it's a different lifestyle, different level of taurine intake between these two groups, modern people and tribal people that are hunters, and gatherers, so to speak. But in this regard, when it comes to Red Bull, these arseholes, I'll call them that. That's my personal opinion, YouTubia, but that's what they are. And basically, they create a product that gives people a boost, and obviously, young people that want to study at night and all that will take this sort of stuff, and they'll have this magnified effect of caffeine keeping them up awake. But that doesn't mean you're going to be performing much better, or way better to be in a low carbohydrate state with a much calmer mind and a much more focused mind. But anyway, that's a different story for another day. Yeah, but it's bullshit. Yeah, it's not dangerous. It's the caffeine, which is the problem, that gets magnified. So go and check that video. You just have to type insomnia and Harry Serpanos, and you'll find the video about carnivores and insomnia. Anyway, Kate, good to see you. Oops. You never should trust anyone's claims. Why do you think I pin every single thing in the description, every single study that I look at and review or talk about? Because you guys need to basically know that, I'm just not talking off the top of my head. Well, I do many times, but that's a different thing. But I can back up everything that I say. And I need to be able to back up everything that I say. And when better research and, a deeper understanding and appreciation, or things that I didn't go down that rabbit hole to identify or understand, that you should not basically just take things at face value. That's why I always say, challenge me, come back and say, look, and sometimes we've found that sometimes people don't tell me everything. Surprise, surprise. I'm not saying that people lie. It's just people omit. They think, oh, it's not unimportant. And that little thing that they think is unimportant sometimes is the important thing that's not allowing them to actually, their body to work properly or get the results that they want. So, but it's, and sometimes I will omit things because for a whole lot of reasons. I'm human after all. And so you need to basically bring me back as well and say, well, you didn't cover this, Harry. Okay. Then I'll cover it. So it's none of us are gods and none of us are correct all the time. So, do I make errors? Yes, I do. I'm human after all. Do I try to correct my errors? Yes, I do. Do I try to understand why I made those? Exactly. And most people don't, for their own reasons. It goes from arrogance to complete ignorance. There's a whole lot of reasons why people don't. But I try. But for me, mine is a pursuit of knowledge and pursuit of understanding things to the level of truth that I can get to. Obviously, if I really, only God knows everything. I can live multiple lifetimes and never know everything. It's just the reality. So all I can do is basically provide you guys with the best understanding that I have at a specific point in time. That's it. So, and that's why I say don't trust anything, because at that specific point, how deep do I understand something? I may think I understand it a bit deeper, but I may, there may be some areas where I've not, and that's important. So, because otherwise we end up, there's you could say the inflection point between crack pottery and science is very close and very narrow, and it's very easy to fall on either side. if you're not on the other side, if you're not careful. So yeah, it's just the reality. That's why I say that. I don't say it accidentally because it also keeps me honest and also keeps me, always thinking, you know, have I really covered that properly? Have I really understood it properly? Why is this other person commenting in this way and mentioning this? You know, you got to think about things. I could just turn around and say, oh, fuck off. I'm right, you're wrong. But I'm not learning anything either. Neither is that person. So, anyway, there was a chef series that claimed to follow looking through the blue zones and the image. Yeah, it's all garbage. It's all garbage, believe me. I've seen some of those and it's complete and utter excrement. You know, they are very selective with what they pick deliberately to push their own line and all that. They'll ignore a whole lot of other things and even obvious things that sometimes they show in their videos. It's ridiculous. You know, they talk about, like, there was one video that was talking about some of the people and they were talking about the tortillas in that region as if they just even the lady herself let, oh, we make these tortillas, they just fill us so we can actually grab all the juices from but yeah, this whole lot of meat that they'll producing and stuff like that, and all these dairy products and all that as pastoralists, and they were just using no different than the Swiss Alps, where they had a bit of like the old Zea bread type, like in Greece, the old Zea bread and stuff like that. But that's not the main staple. That's just a small amount. The rest of it's all dairy. And I was talking to my auntie yesterday because it was called her to wish her Christos Anesti for the Easter, which is, you say basically Χρόνια πολλά, may you have many years, and then you say Christos Anesti, which is God is risen, and she says Alithos Anesti, which is yes, he has. So this is the saying that we have amongst the Greek people, and we just got into it, and because she comes from the same mountainous region that my father comes from, and she could say, yeah, I remember these old geezers that were in their 80s and 90s going up hillsides, steep hillsides with their goats and stuff like that in their 90s and all that. And yeah, that's what we used to eat. You could hardly get any wheat or stuff like that. You got it, and you occasionally had a small amount, and it was like a treat. It wasn't the main food. And I go, think about those things, Thea, because that's what we call an auntie, Thea. And she goes, yeah, you're right. I forgot all about this, but now I'm thinking about these old people. And I said, you're the last of at your generation that still has memory of these things. I don't. You lived with these people and saw them, these pastoralists, that you're a child of the pastoralists. You lived amongst those people in that village in the mountains and you saw them, you know. You're an eyewitness. I'm not. So yeah, we had a bit of that conversation. And this is what I'm saying. Since then, the blue zones have gone to hell in a handbasket. All these tourist areas have come in. You've even got Salad Boy down there in Nagoya, with all these other, honey laden treats that he's trying to sell to the locals. So that's the problem. You got all these loonies and the crackpots and basically gurus, dropping into these areas and sort of trying to monetize it at the expense of other people. That's not trying to understand what is happening, what happened in the past when these people, these old people that got to their 90s and all that, how did they get there? Now you look at the food environment, even in the blue zones, the food environment's changed radically. You can't find these people. You find the locals who are just eating basically processed food in many cases. It's a joke, you know. So blue zones pretty much are very unreliable nowadays, and especially when they focus in the non-traditional areas. Even as I said to people, you want to see the real Greece, go inland. Don't stay on the coast. The coast is corrupted and commercialized. Go inland if you really want to see the old Greece. Oops, don't do that. Now he did some interested and long-lived islanders were 14th in Italy for zones, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, look, it's also confounded. It's also unclear nowadays. It's who knows most of this sort of stuff. I go back and look at the old, if you look at the old reels of, tribal people or the old reels of the Inuit, sitting there hacking away and eating all this raw meat and stuff like that. And they don't even have a word for cancer or cardiovascular disease. That's, even the old video in 1943, even in 43, there were stores in some of these areas. The Inuit was still able to access some Western foods in 1943. So you really have to go even further back when Stefansson was around, in the 20s and 30s to basically really even, Weston A. Price. He went around in the 1930s and 20s. That was the last time, you know, you could still find one ethnic group that was eating their traditional diet and one group that it was close to a store that was actually eating foods of civilization, as he dubbed them. If you try to find today the populations, those who have lived to over 100, those sort of things, you won't find them. What you'll find is a food environment that's been corrupted. So you don't know what these people really ate historically. So it's just ignore it. It's just garbage. I wouldn't waste my time. It's completely and utterly garbage. I look at even barley, barley's changed completely, you know. Yep, later this year I am saving up for it and sort of saving up for all my leave as well because I've basically decimated my leave, Kate, with all the C-19 bullshit that I had to take additional time off, as you know, last year to basically prevent my employment loss. Yeah, so I'm not happy. I'm pissed off about the whole situation. But anyway, let's move on before I get really angry about the whole situation. But anyway, does rainwater contain other chemical pollutions because of... Look, if you're in an area which is highly polluted, yes. Rainwater could contain contaminants. So, yeah. I'm just using that as an example of the deuterium level. I'm not talking about contaminants, Obviously, if you live in an area where you're going to basically have potentially a lot of contamination, heavy metal contamination, all sorts of things. Now, you could probably filter that rainwater, but then there's that it's an additional expense. Is it worth it? I'll leave that up to people. I'm not going to decide people's lives. You have to work out. I'm just telling you, giving you the information. How you act on it is your business and what you can afford. So basically, is a bag of popcorn a day decent transition to carnival loads of... I'm not even going to answer that. Hello, you should know. You shouldn't be asking me popcorn. I mean, please, mate. I mean, if you want to transition with something like, if you want to transition with some plant, transition with something like, pumpkin, you know, low sugar pumpkin, something like that, you know, some other things like pickled cucumbers or something like that. Transition with something which is, that sort of stuff. Popcorn, or really? No. Oh, thank you, Kate. I've still got my throat isn't 100%. I'm still sort of, even though I did my last rat test, which was negative. Dad is actually, this is a shocker. Dad's 87, and he's actually recovered better than me from our recent COVID situation. So Dad recovered. He's back to normal. And here's me. I've still got this underlying bit of a cough thing. He's not 100% either. He still seems a bit, not run down, but doesn't seem like he's. I think the best way it was described. Hello Kitty. She basically said to me, Dad doesn't have that smiley, really expressive and bubbly, I said, no, he doesn't. Yeah. post-COVID, he seems, I'm not saying he's depressed, but he just doesn't seem to be his bubbly self. Um, so I don't know what's happening there. I've told him that he needs to fast for 3 days to do an immune reset. So I need to motivate myself this week to do the same thing. I just haven't mentally got myself around to it, but I don't know whether the situation is sort of impeding me, but I can go without like time restricted feeding for quite some time, but I just can't motivate myself to do a 3-day fast at the moment. But I need to do it to do a reset. So 3-day fast, kill off the old immune system, no taurine, no vitamin D. And the reason for taurine is we don't want to take any taurine when we do a 3-day reset, is because taurine has the ability to, if cells are slightly old, immune cells, but they're not highly senescent, it will protect them rather than kill them off. So it'll actually improve them or lower senescence, but I want to get rid of all the old immune cell, reduce the level of the old immune cells in my thymus and other parts of my endocrine system, and then rebuild rebuild endocrine system. I mean, my lymphatic system, all the areas where all the immune system is stored. I want to lower that and actually rebuild it. And so what I'll do is I'll go through and do a 3-day fast, and then after that I'll go for 3 days, 50,000 IUs. Now, somebody's quite a bit overweight or stuff like that, they may have to go much higher, because the fat cells can absorb that. And then pretty much, I'm going to do a video and then pretty much drop down after a couple of days down to 10. And then after that, also do the high taurine as well, like 10,000 IUs, 10,000 grams IUs. I'm losing it. And then come down. I'll do a video about it to cover that properly. So, and do a reset so I can actually get rid of this croaky or this cough that I still got a bit of a cough that doesn't want to go away, which is annoying. Anyway. So yes, I may have a glow, but I've got a cough and it's annoying. Anyway, I'm cooling down after leaving scathing comments on Raw Vegetard, Gillian Berry. Ah, yes. On her children's book, Happy Food. Oh, wonderful. And she's stuck vegan deterioration channel, which is now down. Did she struck? Oh, really? Damn, I didn't hear that. Oh, that's why I haven't seen any notifications from vegan deterioration. Oh, shit. That's nasty. Yes, you can expect the Vagoons to be nasty, so it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, look, these people, if you saw the recent video that I did on diabetes 1 type thing, the most recent one covering about protein deficiency and the problems that can cause. Obviously, when we talk about protein deficiency, you're going to talk about, there's going to be other deficiencies on a Vagoon diet, which is micronutrients and all that. But how much, excluding protein and eliminating, because when you actually exclude protein, you're also eliminating a lot of taurine in the diet as a consequence. The less meat you eat, the less taurine you consume. And so as a consequence, that has ramifications to, those islet cells in the pancreas. So, these people are really harmful to children with their misanthropic dietary approach. There's not even one population anywhere in the world that is a multi-generational Vagoonerized society. There are vegetarian societies that eat seasonal starch and seasonal fruit traditionally, and most of the rest of the year they consumed a high level of dairy and eggs and things like that, and some of them even fish. We know that. We know from even the one that I did on Grundy, he even admitted the stuff that he had seen in the Loma Linda, the original stuff, their original diets and all that. They don't do many studies nowadays to promote theirs. I always refer back to those older studies that were done with 50+% animal-based diet, because that's what it was. dairy, eggs. 50% was dairy, which Grundy told us because he had actually witnessed it himself. There's an eyewitness cardiologist who we know is a plant-based cardiologist and had witnessed it and then actually told us. And they even told him he was wrong. Even they told him he was wrong. We know he's wrong on a lot of things. So, yes. Lukey, how are you, mate? I did send you an email, so if you do want to come on, you're welcome. Don't get any ideas, Richard. Don't get. Yes, I know. It's how do you do that? It's a new one. It's the first one that I've heard. Actually, it's funny. Yeah, it is funny. Popcorn for transition to carnivore. That is funny. Ah, yes. Needs to be spanked severely by Ted or Lord Edward Yellow, to be more precise. Yes, yes. Oops. Don't do that. Don't do that. StreamYard just decided to jump a bit. You got to be very careful when StreamYard tries to jump. You got to be stop the urge. You know, your hand's about to. If you click on something else, it will actually just jump, and because it's going, and you'll hit something completely different. So I have to be very careful to sort of control the urge. Yeah, these misanthropists are annoying with their BS. I was having Harry withdrawals too. You know what? Actually, there was an advantage to all this. I actually noticed that all my other videos spiked. All the other videos, people were watching the old videos, and they were actually, it's like when they first got it produced, they spiked like that, and then it was down here, and then they spiked again in recent times. And I'm going, I got some additional viewerships. That was a nice bonus. So, yes, yes. So some people found their way to deal with their withdrawal. Happy Easter to you as well, mate. Hey, Gary, how have you been? I haven't seen you at the Zoom thing, mate. So, how are things in WA? So we're running the Zoom session at the moment. I'll just put. G'day, mate. How's it going?
Harry, it's me from the cyberpunk future dystopia of Canada.
Oh, yes. Have they inserted anything into you yet? Device, that is. We're not talking about anything sexual at the moment, even though that punk sexual look, like in those old 80s movies.
No. I'm still au naturel.
Oh, okay, good. So they haven't actually, yes, they haven't actually found you yet or hunted you down.
No, I'm hiding out in the milk tunnels.
Oh, good. How is the milk flowing from the south?
The milk's good, actually. It just started flowing again for the first time in about a year. I was like 9
Was it
or
a whole year?
10 months, I think, without raw milk access for a little while there.
Shit.
Yeah, the lady I was getting it from, just the cow she had was very disagreeable, so she felt like she was risking her life every time that she was milked. So she sold it and had a child, actually. And then just got a new cow. So I have milk again. That's awesome for me.
Fantastic.
And for Corinne.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great news to hear. Yeah, it's our world has been a bit topsy-turvy, turned upside down in the last 2 years for everyone, but it's been a bit. I think the craziest areas in the world have been places like Austria, Canada, New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Australia's been on the main. It hasn't been too bad like in Tasmania compared to the rest of Australia, the rest of Australia's been really. We've had like vast periods where we didn't have as many restrictions. Where Melbourne, like Victoria, New South Wales, Western Australia in particular, the level of lockdowns and the level of coercive control was just incredible.
So you're a little bit insulated from the island protections.
Yeah, basically, we didn't experience as severe sort of restrictions and all that. It was more the mandates in terms of employment where the biggest pressure was coming from, and that didn't even start until towards the end of last year and early this year. So it wasn't even that front wasn't as severe, which allowed me to keep my employment.
Yeah, I was glad to hear that you were able to navigate that without being coerced into any certain procedures.
But it actually decimated my leave. That's the only thing. So when it comes to leave, I'm very, very, very low, which is fucking annoying. But anyway, what can you do? It's the current reality that I have to live with. So I'm trying to build up my long service leave. I should get some additional towards the end of the year. So, and that's the one that I actually really decimated quite a bit. So quite a lot. And I was hoping to take quite some time off, but that's not going to happen now.
Well,
so I'm quite pissed off about it, but I can't do anything about it. It's just a reality.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that things will turn around here soon. Although I don't know. I mean, I want them to, but I'm not confident at all that we won't just go right back into another wave of restrictions in the fall. Certainly here, anyway. The media narrative, which is a good way to sort of gauge the government's intent for what they want to groom acceptance for, certainly in Canada anyway, where we have state-sponsored media like the CBC, is just seeking every opportunity to keep the fear right up. I mean, there's restrictions are currently gone where I am, touch wood about it, but probably half of the people still follow them anyway. I still see people on the regular outside wearing masks alone in the sun on a windy day. So
same here.
It's just I feel so badly for them. That's all I can say about it at this point, that they're allowing themselves to be that afraid.
Oh, look,
clinging to life so fiercely that they're forgetting to live,
Yeah, exactly. Look, it's weird. I see a lot of, in particular, more younger people than older people with masks, with the mask wearing, which is just shocking,
Yeah, I noticed that a lot here too. That's
you expect young people to be more rebellious, but it's the complete wrong other way around. The older people are actually more rebellious than the younger people. I mean,
rebellion's been completely co-opted. I remember when people with dyed hair and leather jackets meant that they were a little bit counterculture, and now it means that they're the most on board with all of the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. It's it's frightening that and that's what worries me as well, because it's this generation that will inherit, large parts of the planet, in terms of politics in the next 20 years.
Well, yeah, I expect the politics to remain relatively radical the way they are for about a generation, because that's how long it will take for the people who are growing up under this oppression to rebel against it.
That's true. Yeah, it's we need to realize that it's going to be quite restricted compared to what it was in the past for some time, which is something that I'm unhappy, and I think you're unhappy and many others are, but it's the reality of what we're going to have to deal with, find ways to navigate that, find ways to be able to try and influence other people to realize how bad it is. So it's going to be, I say to people, because some people say, well, take up arms. And I say, well, when you're a small minority group, that's terrorism, because basically, and it's not even anti-democratic, because you're just a small group. Just because you disagree with the majority and the majority is wrong, you need to try and convince people that they are, and why they're wrong, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and optics are so important most of any movement has to be based on optics in this day and age if you intend to get any traction at all, unless
Yep.
it's going to turn to violence, which absolutely I do not advocate for in any capacity. So
Yeah.
because if you arm yourself even non-violently, that will be used against you as you're becoming militant. It'll be used to
Precisely.
justify violent action against you preemptively by the government. So
Yeah. And the reality is you won't achieve what you're trying to achieve anyway.
mm,
You know, I would say if you've got millions and millions of people out there um, peacefully protesting and peacefully objecting against these things, the reality is it's really hard for them to basically use violence. It makes it much harder for them when you're, and it's even the law people, law enforcement authorities, people in the military, when they look at this, they go, well, I'm not going to basically, violate these people's rights. I mean, they're not doing anything,
mhm.
they're not a threat or anything like that. And that's where we have to basically approach things, because ultimately we don't want to end up in some authoritarian state, because usually when you get violence and you get civil war or whatever, usually you get a strong man that ends up at the top, and
Right.
and you end up worse off than when you started. So I know it's appealing to some people to think that violence can actually sort out, but I go, look at Africa. They tried multiple times with a lot of violence, and our ancestors in Europe, they were killing each other left, right, and center for centuries. It didn't
Mhm.
fix anything. All it did was end up piling up the death count,
Mhm.
the body count. That was it. So the guillotine never ran dry for years. Did it fix anything in France? No. It just exacerbated the violence until it got to the level where you got a strong man, whether it was Napoleon or somebody else.
Right, right. Well, I mean, the French Revolution is a great one to look to as well for anybody who thinks that they should go tearing down the system, because they should remember who the last ones to be guillotined were.
Exactly. Precisely. The so-called rebels
Yeah, the
were the
ones
ones
who
that
led
were,
it. Yep.
yeah, but they also, a lot of them ended
But
up being
we have
guillotined as
that in the
well.
modern day, basically, with the woke mob and their insistence on purity. That's people try to adhere to it, and they can't be pure enough, and the mob turns on them.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. It's already here. That sort of you know guillotine mentality is already here amongst the woke group. It just
Yes,
hasn't gone to the next level of violence.
thankfully, it no longer requires them to kill you to remove you from effective discourse anymore.
Yes, exactly. Gives you
So
another chance to come
maybe we
back.
should count our blessings for
I
YouTube's
know, I know.
bannings.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yes,
We should
they
keep
could
our
have taken
heads
it to the
about it.
next level.
Ha 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 ha.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes. Um, uh, yeah, rabbit starvation is basically when you've got very little fat on board. That's, you will get into rabbit starvation very quick. Somebody who's got is obese, morbidly obese, for them to get into rabbit starvation is next to impossible. So you got to really be lean out and have very little body fat on to end up in rabbit starvation. So
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you're just going to wake up in either. It will be a decline into it. You would feel badly before you got there.
oh well, anything which is related to skin of any sort, whether it's elbow anywhere on your body, it's really fat soluble vitamins. Remember, there's either a deficiency in protective role of you know niacin. So you've either you're not eating enough pork or tuna or things like that to get enough niacin. And now, even if you're getting enough fat soluble vitamins, you can still have some issues, and that could be because for whatever reason, it could be environmental. It's not only UV, but also environmental and many other things, and you're overexpressing for whatever reason a lot of matrix metalloproteinases out of your liver, and it's affecting the sort of tissue area. So obviously you have to assess your own diet. Am I getting enough fat soluble vitamins to regulate the enzymes, these collagen degrading enzymes? And the other thing is, am I basically have I assessed my environment that may be also generating this? Because there can be environmental factors that can also increase matrix metalloproteinases. There are chemicals, there are all sorts of things in the environment that can actually have this effect. So you'd have to first start from your diet, and then if that looks pretty good, then you'd have to assess your environment. And send me an email if there are, if you've assessed things. Have you changed your job recently? Have you changed your home recently? That means a different environment. And is that environment, have you assessed it properly? Have you looked for mold? Have you looked for all sorts of things? Is there any, because sometimes there can be heavy metal contaminants in paints and stuff. There's a lot of things that can actually cause anything skin related. It's not just the diet. So Joe, how are you, mate? Hello, Harry and gang. Had a heart attack last week. Shit. It's really good to see you all. I hope you're on high dose of taurine, because basically, if you've had a stroke or a heart attack, high doses. I know you've only recently been trying to transition to a carnivore diet because you're on a sad diet for quite a few years, and you've only recently looked at moving in that direction. But obviously, you had some underlying condition and stuff like that. The diet isn't going to fix that. I learned that when I went into the hospital and had about 90% blockage, because I listened to my body and I sort of didn't feel that well. At that stage, you're too late. You've already done all the damage, and then you're a walking time bomb, so to speak. But what we have seen in the literature, and this is a lot of literature, I know it's animal based, where they induce heart attacks, strokes, and stuff like that. It's the reperfusion when you get a hypoxic environment that's actually generated from the clotting and from the blockage. When that breaks down and you get blood coming rushing back into that area, what happens is you get excessive oxidative stress. The only thing that can there are two things you can use to deal with oxidative stress of that high level, because it's the reperfusion that does the damage also to the heart. Like, it'll actually cause a massive fibrosis. I had mild fibrosis, not massive fibrosis, but when you have a heart attack, because I had like an angina, a mild angina, so I had some stuff it was like a mini heart attack, you could say, but I didn't have a massive heart attack. So that was a bit the difference. So I wasn't feeling so well. I was feeling a bit dizzy and all that. So it was a mild, it didn't knock me out. But so I would have had a mild damage to the heart muscle. But to fix that and reverse that, you really need high doses of taurine. So obviously you're on a carnivore diet. You're not now, in the last couple of months, you're not doing any sort of stuff like that. So what you do need to do is you need to basically get high lows, work your way up. You don't want to do it immediately, like 2 grams, 4 grams, 6 grams over a couple of days and weeks, as you get up to 10 grams. And you need to do that for quite a lot of months, at a minimum 6 months, in order to fix a lot of that damage and reverse a lot of that fibrosis.
And mindful of blood pressure medication.
That's true. I don't think Joe is taking any blood pressure medication at all. And I don't think he's taking any lithium as well. But I do have a video covering lithium and blood pressure meds.
Say, Harry, sorry, let me interrupt.
Yep.
So I've recently made friends with a 75-year-old man who has 3 stents.
Yep.
His diet's probably not as bad as most people. Because he lives on a farm and he's fairly active. he does eat carbs. I'm not at the point that I want to encourage him to remove all that stuff, but he does trust my advice, or sorry, my opinions
Has he
around
got? I'll just
around
ask you one
these
thing.
things. Yes.
Has he got rid of the oils?
That was my first bit of advice, was to go through his cupboards and throw away all of his any vegetable oil or sunflower oil. That he did have sunflower oil on hand.
That's
so,
the number one heart producer, heart attack producer.
That's what I was sort of educating him on,
Yep.
since he doesn't have any insulin resistance problems or anything either. So it must have been the seed oils. But so I've recommended to him to examine taurine, and he's started taking some at 2 grams. He's not on any other medications, thankfully, which is
Good.
very uncommon where I live for a man of his age.
True. Yes.
And he was already on 100 microgram K2 MK4, which I was very impressed by. And he does take a little bit of vitamin D.
Yep.
I figured this could be a decent opportunity if
Probably
you wanted to cook this or whatever, as just a basic protocol for someone his age.
Yep, I'd also add L-citrulline in that, because the reason he's more prone to clotting factors, because he's got the stents.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 3 stents, and that's a problem with basically creating clotting factors, which is unfortunate, but it's a reality. I'm glad I never went down the stent way, even though I had to go through a double bypass surgery, which was horrendous. I'm glad that I never had any stents put in, because they do increase clotting factors, which is a problem to manage. Sort of rat, warfarin, which is a rat poison, using that, which is very toxic to the body, or using constant amounts of aspirin and stuff like that, which is also can cause a lot of bleeding problems in a lot of people. They've actually, even the most recent study assessment of aspirin showed that the difference is you're going to basically have bleeding of your arteries before you actually have the heart attack. So in terms of it being beneficial, it's not. So I would rather have people, vasodilate themselves with L-citrulline rather than actually aspirin.
How much citrulline would you recommend? Like a gram?
Yeah, I'd start with a gram, and then I'd work up to 2 grams. 1 gram early in the day and 1 gram later before going to bed, because you tend to actually most heart attacks or issues happen late at night. And so when you've got issues with stents and all that actually do increase clotting factors, they're a problem. I believe that they should use a balloon to basically open up the artery, and they should not use stents.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be.
Are really
leave
bad.
It in there. It did give him a new lease on life when he had the procedure done, at least. But yeah, anyway, they're there now.
Yeah, you can't take them out once they're in. They lodge in such a way where you end up ripping the entire artery, to get them out. It's not an easy way. Once they're in, they're in.
Well, he is 75, and he'll be 75 this year. I believe he's 74. Yep. He is a man of strong faith as well, so he is not afraid of trying these things.
Okay, that's good.
In his view, he either survives or graduates.
Precise, yeah. Exactly.
Not to say that he wants to be reckless either, though. So he is on metatetronone as well. But they were 100 microgram capsules. Is that a reasonable dose? I mean, I know it's low, and you'd want to start low if he has significant calcification anyway. But
yeah, well, when it comes to sort of specific meds, I don't ever.
No. I mean, he's on he's on K2,
MK4. Yep. With how? Okay. When did he actually take? When did he have his last stent?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I gather it's been a while.
If it's some length of time, which he's had that, then he should technically at this stage have stable plaque. So he should be it stay. Once you actually, I don't actually recommend people take any minoquinone 4 until somebody has stable angina. And the reason for that is because you need to build up the calcium. Initially, the calcium levels will go up. That's why I say CAC scores can be a bit misleading, because as they're going up, the body is trying to stabilize the angina. So it's actually a good thing that the body's actually trying to do that. The last thing you want to do is impede it or derange it in any way. So or force it to do something different. So you get stable, and your CAC score will go up initially. And once it goes up and stabilizes, then you hit it with high doses, because that's when it's like, when you have an injury on your hand, how it actually initially it's soft, and then it calcifies, and then it actually creates that thick skin. And then what happens is it goes away, because the body just clears it all away. That's what's supposed to happen. And that's when you give it the minoquinone 4 in higher doses to basically clear it out. So you can go up to 45. With the Japanese studies and the Netherlands studies, that were using 45 micrograms per day. So 15, 15, and 15.
45 micrograms or milligrams?
Oh, sorry. Milligrams. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Milligrams.
Okay. Yeah.
Milligrams.
So he's on 100 micrograms right now, which is a pretty low dose.
Yeah.
But I had warned him that you don't want to destabilize the calcium too quickly anyway.
But that's if he's sorry. I mean, my brain isn't actually working on all cylinders. Is probably a bit rusty.
It's the COVID brain fog. It's got you, Harry.
It probably has. But going back to what I was saying earlier, thanks for picking that up. Yeah, the actual most people probably will get 100 to 200 from their diet in terms of, that in many cases they don't even have to supplement, especially if you're eating a number of eggs and stuff like that. There's quite a bit of minoquinone 4 in eggs. I think it's about 70 something micrograms, so there's quite a bit. But obviously, when you're doing therapeutics, you need these higher doses to clear out the calcification. But that is if he's had like a certain level of calcification now that it actually has happened for some time.
Yeah, one issue is I know that in New Brunswick they don't do CAC scans.
So we can't actually test.
I asked my doctor about it. She had never heard of it. Acted like I was spouting woo at her.
Okay. Yeah. Look, if we can't test and we don't know exactly what his CAC score is, it's because usually if it's gone over over 1,000 and all that, what has actually happened is you've got quite a bit of calcification that's actually, and you've got a lot of stabilization. Now the other thing is, I also recommend that people do also an ultrasound, and the reason for that is we want to see whether the calcification is thick or spread. So you could actually have it can be spread out and can be through the arteries and actually be much thinner, or it can be actually built up. So it can actually be slightly different in that regard. So it's not the same the way the morphology of the calcification is. So that can actually be a factor as well.
Well, just as a maintenance dose, I was assuming 5 milligrams would be reasonable, which would still be 50 times what he's taking in one of those.
Exactly. 5 milligrams would be probably a safe option for him to take, like the Carlson one at this stage, because we don't know enough about what his status is before we start poking around at these high doses. At those high doses, I get people to go and do a whole lot of tests.
Yeah.
And if I don't know exactly what their state of affairs is internally, I just usually recommend the Carlson one. I've been doing that for some time as the safest option. Go for the Carlson one, 5 milligrams, or if you've got either a low CAC score or no CAC score as a 0-1, and you just want to take some minoquinone 4, just go for the 100 microgram one which is, just sort of supplementing over what you're getting from the diet, just in case you're not getting enough. And that's pretty much sort of my approach to minoquinone 4, and has been for some time. But you've got to be very careful when playing around with decalcification. You have to really know exactly at what point you are in that sort of healing process.
So
because initially you will calcify to stabilize that area, and beneath, what will happen is then as the endothelium heals, the macrophage will start pulling out a lot of the sort of those lipids, and clearing out a lot of that sort of soft sort of tissue, and then it will start breaking down the calcium, start removing the calcium slowly, but it happens really slowly and all that. The reason why we want to accelerate it at that stage, because, okay, the endothelium is actually healed, we want to take it out, is for 2 reasons. One, we want to expose that so we can actually create new glycocalyx to basically reduce any propensity of stuff sticking to the walls. That's one thing. And the other thing that we want to do is we also want to reduce the blood pressure as well, because once you take away a lot of that calcium, you reduce the stiffness of the blood vessels as well, and blood pressure will come down. And I noticed that with myself, it took me quite some time before my blood pressure started normalizing, coming to the lower levels.
I was going to suggest
period.
he could try adding magnesium glycinate on top of that as well, as it would have
that wouldn't be a bad problem, a bad thing to do. Plus, with the L-citrulline, that will vasodilate the other arteries around the body, which also should have a dropping effect in blood pressure as well,
right,
in general. So that all that will help, and then it's basically keeping it clean to heal, because there's no other. You can't continue assaulting the endothelium and taking supplements. It just doesn't work like that.
Of course. Okay, so he also has hearing loss. He wears hearing aids. That was that was the main reason I had suggested taurine to him in the first place. Is there anything specific you would suggest on top of that?
Yeah, look, once you're in that age bracket, very old age bracket, there can be quite a lot of there can be quite a lot of tissue damage, a lot of senescence in that regard. And that senescent tissue will actually generate its own inflammatory cytokines, localized, still doing more damage to the tissue. So it's obviously taurine can mitigate some of that and reduce some of that senescence and all that. But it's a really, the younger you start, the better results you have. So it can be quite some time before you see results, especially in these older age brackets. So if you're middle age, you can actually see, like myself, I saw much quicker results. I had tinnitus and I no longer have tinnitus. It's completely been eliminated. But other people that are in older age brackets, they've been doing it for like 4-5 years, and I got around that period where it sort of dropped off. But I don't see it in people that are, that have approached me that are in their 70s or whatever. They've seen reductions in tinnitus, but it's happened much slower. And it's also been frustrating that it's much slower. But I'm going, well, you're older, you've got more damaged tissue, and your capacity to heal, because you've got more damaged tissue, is reduced. So it takes longer.
Right.
I can't turn back time for people.
So
people need to realize that.
Potentially some sort of a fasting or Pfizer protocol might help with that, but that's not something I'm necessarily comfortable advising him on.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, and I mean, most of my subscribers really know their stuff. They're up to date with a lot of that sort of stuff. They can apply that protocol. I usually prefer people just get their whole health at some much more manageable point, and then start playing around with these. It's only with desperate people, like with cancer and stuff like that, is when we go to the Pfizer sort of full tong sort of approach, because then you've got nothing to lose sort of attitude. And even for Joe, Pfizer would be that approach, the way the rest of us do it. The sort of every quarter, giving the other quarter a miss, so your body can sort of come about, that would also help Joe in terms of, being able to clear out some of those senescent cells that would have been produced in his heart by the heart attack itself. So the other thing is I'd get him on a ubiquinol as well, coenzyme Q10, but the reduced form ubiquinol to basically help improve the heart functioning. And I did ubiquinol for about 5 to 6 years. And then the rest I get from the diet nowadays, so I don't bother. You could eat quite a. You could.
Do you have a suggested dosage for that?
Look. I'm trying to remember now. It's a formula based on. I'll email you. I just can't remember the actual formula now.
Sure.
It's based on body weight, so it's based on the amount of tissue you have, how big you are. So, how big is he? Do you know what size he is?
Oh, he's probably close to 200 pounds. He's fairly tall. He's not terribly overweight, but he does have some.
So he would
adipose tissue kind of thing.
Yep, he'd need sort of the higher dose then to be able to cover, because there's a lot of, remember, we don't know where it goes everywhere to all tissues. Obviously, the heart and the brain hog most of it, more of it, and the liver a bit, but it'll diffuse throughout the whole body. So, your doses depend on your weight for a lot of things. That's why I like veterinary science. Veterinary science bases their dosages based on the size of the animal.
Yeah, it's funny how veterinary science sometimes overlaps with better solutions than modern medicine.
Exactly.
I've recently encouraged a couple of my friends to take taurine, and the one that I've sent them was the specific, actually the Nature's Life one that you take. And they look at the Amazon reviews and be like, "Why is everyone talking about their dogs and cats with this?" I'm just like, because their pets eat better than you do.
Exactly. Precisely. Yeah, that's true. Humans eat atrociously. We have for a long time. I mean, Joe would have been in a food environment where he was eating basically a lot, because he sort of gets to, travel a bit and all that. And he would have been eating a lot of fast food, because that was the easiest thing to get. And a lot of the fast food, unfortunately, even burgers, even the burgers, sometimes some fast food outlets won't even grill them. They'll put them into seed oils and cook them so they can cook them faster. So you don't know what you're getting.
I have a little story about seed oil.
Don't know what you're getting
immediately after this, but yeah, okay. So I really appreciate that, because he's eager to try to make some changes, and it's rare for me to have somebody actually want my help with something like that. So. All right. So for vegetable oil, I just about 3 weeks ago, I was invited over for a potluck dinner with some friends I hadn't seen in a while, family, and I brought a steak with me to cook for myself, because I knew that it's just habit. I want to be social, I want to participate, but I don't want to rely on what they have. And the frying pan that I cooked it in had been seasoned with vegetable oil, and had just a little bit of vegetable oil in the pan. And I realized that after like 2 small bites, I could taste it, right? I was like just wincing, and I was like, what kind of oil was in that pan there? Oh yeah, vegetable oil, wonderful. Okay. So I immediately jumped into a 3-day fast. Didn't finish the steak, obviously. Immediately jumped into a 3-day fast, and just to make sure that it wasn't incorporated into any of my tissue. And my lower back locked up so badly from inflammation that I couldn't bend over and could hardly stand for about a week after like 2 bites like that big of steak that was fried in vegetable oil. That little, that would have been like probably
it doesn't take much.
Less than a teaspoon. Probably could have been on that steak. Less than that. I don't know. I was amazed.
Yeah, look, I've let's say had indiscretion days where I've gone somewhere and something like that similar has happened to me, and the next day I really did not feel the same as the previous day, and I'm going. Now it was confounded because there was other other elements in that as well, a bit of cider. But even other times that I've had like 2 ciders, I haven't had that sort of reaction with my stomach. So it's, once you've been away from the poison for some times, your body seems to react far more than what it used to. It just tolerates it. You become desensitized to things over time. That's what a lot of people do. They feel lousy, but they're just so desensitized to it, they just don't know until they change how lousy they felt, so to speak. You know what I'm getting at.
Right. Right.
Now, in terms of gout and stuff like that, what can happen in some regards, if people are basically cheating with alcohol, they can actually end up pushing a lot of that alcohol through the polio pathway and generating shitloads of fructose in the body. And as a consequence, and that's the problem when you cheat with alcohol and stuff like that, you can actually induce gout in yourself. Just because, tribal people could actually cause that themselves as well. So if your hubby's basically drinking alcohol as well, it's probably the alcohol that's caused it and deranged that system. Now, there is a bit of a cheat there, and that's called, when I drink alcohol, I usually take taurine supplementation because what it does is it inhibits basically lactate production through pyruvate, and it actually forces more through the TCA cycle into acetyl-CoA, which means
so before you drink alcohol, you have taurine as opposed to your usual day where you would have taurine.
I still have taurine, but I have more taurine on that day that I'm going to, specifically to prevent that alcohol.
Harry, are you aware of what a meme taurine has become on Bart's server? It's fantastic.
I know. Look, it's one of the most ancient molecules.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not belittling it.
I've actually done a recent video covering with the Pim, so she'll be putting it out shortly. It's about 2 hours long, and it covers everything about taurine, all sorts of things. So
do you remember that list that Bart used to have of his publications? He would just run up the screen really quickly, just as a joke.
Like that.
You should have all of the benefits of taurine listed off that way, and it can just fly by for like 5 minutes of Star Wars text.
I probably should do something like that, just for a laugh. Yes, yeah, but I suspect it's pretty much that's what's happened to hubby. Yes, so, and it has happened to other carnivores as well. And they go, "Oh, I've had this." And I go, "Okay, have you been drinking alcohol?" And they go, "Yeah." I go, "Well, there's your problem. You're basically pushing all that through the polio pathway, and that creates fructose.
Yeah,
that is what is causing your problem with gout.
I had a friend who had a bout of gout at 30 and wasn't told by his doctor to stop drinking. And I tried to tell him that it's the alcohol and the carbohydrates, specifically the fructose in your diet.
It's fructose.
He didn't care. He thought that, he had switched away from wine to beer, so he would be all right.
No. Yeah. Look, a lot of people think, I'm going to try some other alcohol or whatever. They don't realize,
Oh, and red meat. Of course, he wasn't eating red meat because, as we all know, the uric acid in red meat will.
Well, it's actually the derangement of the uric acid cycle. That's what it is. And taurine, what it does, it actually regulates the uric acid cycle. It regulates the uric acid cycle. So in the actual tubule of the actual nephrons, it actually because the kidneys recycle sodium, potassium, magnesium, all these sort of things, and all that. How well they actually do that all comes back to whether you have enough taurine in the system to regulate that. This is why the keto people get into trouble with, they can't regulate their electrolytes. People come over to the carnivore diet, they eat more protein. As long as they're eating more protein, they're getting more taurine by eating more protein. And guess what? Electrolyte issues vanish. Well, same thing with excess uric acid normalizes into the normal range. As long as they're not drinking alcohol, things normalize. Yes, it's always basically alcohol on a carnivore diet, and yes, so I always get that, and I go, you drank alcohol, didn't you? Just be honest with me. And they usually admit it after that. Oh, I just had a few drinks, Harry. Yeah. I've always heard that from people. I only had a few drinks. Glug, 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 glug. Yes. Does dairy use go back long enough to be called ancestral food, comparing to agricultural production, grains and such? Look, the way I view dairy is not something which, it's an animal food. It doesn't have any anti-nutrients in it, you know? The only problem with dairy is that some people have sensitivity to the proteins, and that's only if their gut isn't working properly. So if you're not breaking down the dairy proteins to their, what happens in the stomach? Well, your stomach breaks down those proteins to basic amino acids. That means it denatures protein completely. That's what it's supposed to do. You don't want foreign proteins in. When you get a virus, that's a foreign protein. What does that do? That creates reactivity in your body. Your immune system responds to it. So you need to basically eliminate the, and the only way to do that is to make sure your stomach is actually, the pH is low and the acidity is high, in order for that to be broken down to the basic amino acids. And then nobody has reactivity to the milk proteins, as long as their stomach is functioning properly. And again, we know that sodium, chloride and taurine actually are the ones that actually determine whether your stomach does produce sufficient, acid to basically break down those proteins.
Harry, could you do me a favor? Could you just slide to your left very slightly?
Oh. Nice one. Oops. Very nice, Jared. Very nice.
I'm gonna get a sign that just is on the wall, like behind me over here. That's just a speech bubble for the next one.
Sounds good. Yes, and so when we're looking at things like dairy, like lactose intolerant. There's a question here. Now, obviously, if people don't have the ability to produce those enzymes because they don't have the genetics, obviously that could be a problem. But if you're having raw milk, you'll actually get some of these enzymes. And there's another group of bacteria that also break down lactose. They're called lactobacillus. When you come out of your birth canal of your mummy, every human being on the planet gets coated with lactobacillus, massive amounts. And then we use glyphosate and antibiotics to destroy the living daylights out of our levels of those bacterial strains in our bodies for the remaining 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Mm-hmm. And then we wonder why we all become lactose intolerant. Mm-hmm. No, we've just taken out the bacterial strains that basically keep us from being lactose intolerant. I'll give you an example. People say, oh, Chinese people cannot tolerate dairy. Oh, bullshit. So Hello Kitty, she can tolerate it. She used to be lactose intolerant, Then basically, so she did the Harry Kiefer protocol, plus some of the bacterial strains of the lactobacillus, using these Kiefer methods and stuff like that. And pretty much now, even Mr. Baby, he basically could not tolerate it. Always a young fella in his early, 24, I think, or 25 years, around that age. And recently, because he's been doing the carnivore diet now for nearly it's getting probably close to a year, he's leaned out quite a bit. His ex wants to get back with him. and a whole lot of other ladies as well.
I don't know if that's we can list that as a benefit necessarily, Harry.
Yeah, I know.
I wouldn't market the carnivore diet that way.
No. And on top of that, he basically he was told he can't enter a nightclub because he was underage. They thought he was 15 or 16. He really, you look his old photos where his upper body was narrower, his hips and all that were wider, and he's holding some other stuff, a tray, because he's actually a trained chef. He works at some of the top restaurants as well. And what he's done is now his shoulders have widened out, and he's basically these like middle areas sort of narrowed, and his hips and stuff like that. And he looks quite. He's very muscular, in that short amount of time, because he's been doing taurine as well to use the myostatin inhibition. And as a consequence, exactly, he's been doing the myostatin inhibition. It's a mild form, but it does enhance and magnify muscle protein synthesis. That's why I say for elderly people, leucine and taurine combo to basically restore a lot of these old people that don't get enough protein in their diet. So what has happened is you've seen this sort of change in this younger person is basically now looking like a freaking teenager. I've seen his recent photos because yesterday, because I'd seen his old photos, because she showed me his old photos, and she showed me his recent photos, and I'm going, frick, he looks like he's a teenager. He looks like, one of those kids, the high school kids that go to the prom because he was wearing a suit and all that. And I go, freaking hell, So even young people are getting massive benefits. They're going on a carnivore diet. They're adding a bit of taurine in there, and they are looking very different. So what they looked just half a year ago or a bit longer.
How much leucine do you recommend for that protocol? Just for those rewatching this,
6, 3, and 3. So 3. So if you're having 3 with every main meal, you're having 3 grams of leucine. So twice, so the 2 main meals that you have in the day, so you'll have 3 and 3. And in terms of taurine, again, with the blood pressure and all that other stuff you need to take into account, I do like people taking about 2 grams each time. So 2 grams, with their dinner, and probably their lunch and dinner are probably the main ones, that are the big ones, that they take 2 grams each one of those, and they will see way more improvements. Because one thing, you're going to get, this is why bodybuilders use it, because this is the only thing the bodybuilders understand about taurine. Some of them are a bit smarter and actually have worked out that it actually improves your endurance, your performance, the ability to do longer. But on the other hand, also, they've actually learned that it's an amino transporter. So you can actually get into the amino pool far more aminos into that amino pool. And because it has this mild myostatin inhibition that lowers myostatin, you can actually magnify the muscle protein synthesis. So they spike. They usually, the ones that understand, they spike with branched-chain amino acids when they do that deliberately to basically magnify the muscle protein synthesis. And it's the reason why, you look at all those studies that I've shown with the rats and all that, where they've got the control group, they've got the protein deficient rat, the other protein deficient rat taking taurine, and the taurine sometimes either gets back to baseline. That means even though the rat is protein deficient, gets back to baseline or above. So you can imagine the magnification you can actually achieve when you've actually got quite a bit of protein and you throw those things in. You magnify that muscle protein synthesis and that bulking up. And that's what this young fella has actually noticed. He's rapidly bulked up much quicker than you would be able to achieve normally unless you were using steroids. So that's the sort of difference. Obviously, being younger and having more mitochondrial density and stuff like that, these things can happen much more rapidly than somebody older who's got far more senescence, far more damage, far less mitochondrial density. So you're going to get different effects. But you know what? If you're an old person in a nursing home and you're there, and that person is your father or mother, you can use these things to basically try and actually restore some of their vitality, their ability to move around, so that they can even get off the seat. That's a bonus to be able to get off the seat. Because a lot of people in nursing homes can't even get off their seats because they're eating kibble and they've been atrophying. So these are the sort of things that, I promote to people, using those two supplements, because the problem is in nursing homes. And I do say to people, I would also consider, getting them like a whey protein supplementation, and where they can add that together in one of their main meals, because at least that will actually give them some additional protein that they won't get otherwise in their diet, especially in these sort of facilities.
Yeah, I've been doing, speaking of your kefir protocol, I've actually been back on raw milk kefir since I've had raw milk again, which is great. But I've been noticing that my craving for meat is lessened, and I'm thinking it's because of the extra protein I'm getting from the milk without the carbs.
Yep. Yeah, that look, if your body's getting quite a bit, and you're also, because you do turn over some tissue, and when you take in taurine and take in things like taurine or leucine, in particular taurine, it seems to actually you're getting more that actually supports the sort of the utilization, because it is an amino transporter, so it is an important utilizer of protein in the system. We don't really understand how it works. All our studies are mechanistic in terms of, we know that if we give taurine to a rat that has whatever varied levels of protein, compared to a rat that just gets the same level of protein but no taurine, the rat with the taurine at the same level will actually see greater muscularity. So we know it works. You can do it over and over again. That's a mechanistic, cause and effect. So we know over and over you can do the same thing. That's why I focus on those sort of studies, because it's a dose dependent. You take that happens, and it can happen over and over again with all the rats. So we know in a mammalian model it happens. Now so that's quite clear. So nobody can dispute that, because you can replicate that study over and over again. Anybody can do the study and we'll get the same results. So that's important. That is mechanistic proof. Now, but on the other hand, is the exact, what are the genes that are being turned on, turned off? What's actually happening to achieve this modulation, this change in being able to build this muscular tissue? That we don't know. Unfortunately, we haven't done those sort of, we know a few genes, a few things, but we haven't done the sort of a comprehensive. It's a thing, who's going to finance it, basically? That's the thing. All these studies are like, they're trying to find solutions to problems. It's like the university in the Gaza Strip for Palestinian girls that had anemia. They tried a whole lot of different compounds, and they found that if you gave taurine to the young schoolgirls, their anemia levels went down. It ameliorated it, which means reduced it. And so they said, well, this is a cheap option. We can produce it in a pharmaceutical grade taurine in the lab to provide to schoolgirls in the different school districts within the Gaza Strip. So it was an alternative method where they couldn't actually import more protein because of the restrictions and the difficulties in that region, because of a lot of the politics and stuff like that. But they could at least had an alternative that they could use to basically mitigate a lot of these problems that were being caused by those politics. So yeah, and so there's a novel solution, and that's why I say a lot of my studies, they tend to be from the Middle East and Iran and a lot of countries around the world, and they tend to be basically people that have found that they can use these compounds of different sorts to at least lessen these problems in people. So it's better than nothing for a lot of these populations.
Well, Harry, it's 20 after 11 here, so I'm going to head to bed soon. If I could selfishly hog your live stream with one more interesting personal anecdote that I think it would be interesting to discuss as well, just for the people watching, because I haven't heard of this before.
Go right ahead.
So I just had some blood work done, and I had my free testosterone and estradiol tested for the first time, and just to establish a baseline. and the testosterone was good. It was 22.1 in Commonwealth units, or about 637 in American units. So that's fine by me. The estradiol was below the detectable threshold, so basically close to zero. And I have not heard of this happening. I'm not particularly concerned about it, but I was wondering what your take on that would be.
What's your dosage of taurine?
I'm currently doing 10 grams a day.
That's it, basically.
You think so?
Because it's actually methylating away. There are only two things that actually can methylate estradiol in men from xenoestrogens and many other things. And those two things are basically taurine and choline.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things that can methylate away.
Yeah, I had mentioned it.
So when I get men that have got very high estradiol levels and very low, because I had one guy in Australia. He works in Western Australia. I'm not going to mention his name, but he works in one of the industries over there, and he's exposed to certain chemical compounds and stuff like that.
Okay.
So his xenoestrogen levels are much higher.
Not great.
Exactly. And we've been able to bring them down by really dosing him up on taurine and sorry, and also choline, and brought down his levels and improved his levels of. Well, we haven't brought them down to your levels, but obviously he's still exposed to that sort of environment. So, but we've actually improved his to the low normal level in terms of testosterone, and brought down to below the average, which the average is quite high in our population with all the xenoestrogens and all the carb eating that people have. That's why their estrogen levels in men is much higher. Yeah, so basically that means that you are one of those rare people that are not exposed to a lot of xenoestrogens, but are taking enough of this sort of stuff to basically really knock or methylate away that stuff and really reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the reason why you've had this change, that shift that actually happens.
Yeah, that's so I didn't assume that it would be an
You've
issue.
got
I'm
tribal
glad.
levels, but basically you should consider yourself lucky. You've got tribal levels of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because the blood work actually has like a little note next to it that says L, right? Which means like if they put a little marker if something's below or above the range, which means your doctor should talk to you about it. So they consider that too low for the labs. No, I had mentioned it to Luke, and he had pointed out that too, that the reason that very low estrogen might be an issue in some men is because there would be insufficient testosterone for the conversion as well.
That's right.
Which isn't the issue that I'm having.
No, it's not your case. Your case is basically you've basically, because a lot of people, what may happen is their testosterone actually, their estrogen hasn't converted to testosterone, and it's in the toilet, and their testosterone is also in the toilet.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're basically testosterone is estrogen is all converting over to testosterone, and you've got good levels of testosterone, nothing to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. So I'll just keep being the alpha man that I am.
That's it. An alpha uber carny man. That's right. A raw carny man, because he does drink raw milk.
I do drink raw milk. I do also enjoy a good sear on a steak, though.
Impressed with your new manly sort of status?
Oh, Harry, she melts. She swoons at the thought of me.
Okay, there you go. So Corinne's just worshipping the ground you walk on. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, I need but glance, and the confidence just exudes.
Oh, fantastic.
All right. Well, I need to get to bed.
You need to get to bed. That's true. Yes, in Newfoundland, it is quite late.
It's New Brunswick, actually.
Ah, yes.
Yes, I'll forgive you that, for I'm not an islander.
Sorry,
actually, I think the Newfoundlanders would take more offense to being called a New Brunswicker.
Okay. Oh, would they? Oh, well,
Yeah, it's sort of they have sort of like a
Send
unique.
them
It's almost
over to send them over to
Newfoundland
troll me.
joined Canada in 1949, if I'm
Okay.
correct off the top of my head. So they sort of have like almost like a separate national identity.
I did the new time frames just recently. So, did I do them correctly? I hope I did.
So Newfoundland would be. I'm in Atlantic time. They would be 30 minutes ahead of me. So
You're in Atlantic
they would
time,
be
that's right,
GMT
yeah.
minus 2.5. I'm GMT minus 3.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
I hope I've got the dates.
Doesn't matter.
Before
I work it
before
out.
you go, I'll actually put I'll just share some of the stuff that Lukey put up. So I forgot about this. Exactly. God almighty. What can one say? Carney leaves. Say no more.
Is that Ray Pete in the middle?
Yeah, that's Ray Pete.
I've never seen a picture of him. I'm just guessing because I know that Luke enjoys his Ray Pete harping. So
yes, he does. He does. He does.
As he deserves.
Exactly. And over here, Darth Boris. He's this Sith Lord so powerful he can raise mitochondria with his diet. Is it possible to learn this power not from a vegetard? Now apparently I'm a Sith. I'm deuterium depleting Sith Lord.
Well, the Star Wars movies are rebel propaganda. You know that.
That's exactly right. Yes, they are trying to keep you in a vagunarized state and way away from your deuterium depleting Sith Lord.
All right. Well, on my way out, I will plug my channel, which is right here.
Yes, do that.
I haven't posted as often on the schedule that I would like, but I have been posting a lot more often lately. So, I mean, if you enjoy my attitude, please feel free to subscribe to that. And on that note, have a good night, everyone. Have a good night, Harry.
Good. Yes.
This was fun.
Did you put it in the actual?
No, I just pointed to it right here on screen. JB Morrison.
There it is.
That's me. It's was registered under my old Nanks handle, and I changed the name. So unfortunately, I can't get the vanity URL.
Okay. But even if you use that, it'll redirect to.
That's correct.
Jared's and he does a lot of interviews of people in Canada.
I did. Yeah, I have
struggling against the authoritarian Trudeau regime.
Yeah, I have a playlist that I made of there are 48 interviews. Each one is a different person from the anti-mandate protests that were here in Fredericton, where I live. And it's just people articulating in their own words, unedited, why they're in attendance. And the reason for that was because I anticipated that it would be misreported in the media as a racist, misogynist, white power event. And I wasn't disappointed. So I'm glad that I have that to refer to for people who enjoy that Kool-Aid a little bit too much, that I can show them what these people had to say for themselves. I also play guitar here and there.
Yes, he does. Yes. So,
anyhow,
I've always tried to actually drag you to come onto one of my live streams and play a bit of music. But
yeah, I could do that. Now I figured out too. Part of the reason I was hesitant before was because I didn't have a good external mic setup.
That's it.
But I figured out a really simple solution, which is if I take this headset off and just set it on my desk here, I can sort of position the microphone to be close enough to my mouth and far enough from the guitar that it's a decent sound.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I could play some guitar.
We'll have to do something like that maybe next time.
Yeah, sure.
Sounds good.
Rock and roll.
Exactly.
Oh, that looks like I was just pointing over here. Rock and roll.
Thanks, mate, for being here. Always appreciated.
Thanks, Harry. This was fun. I'll have to stop by again soon.
Yeah, definitely. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Yeah, see you, mate. Oh, back to this joker. Back to your Sith Lord, kiddies. I need to find my spot. God. I realise I'm way behind. So there's nothing new there. It's another afternoon in the... So let me find my spot. That's right, with the red light. I do have a red light right there and one in my bedroom. So yes, it can be beneficial. It does lower cortisol levels. It does improve things, but it's, like all light sources, it's not a panacea. You can't guzzle down a whole lot of inappropriate things and, and go out in the early hours of the morning, get the red light, that, near infrared, go out and earth yourself and all that and do things. So yes, it has some value, but, diet is number one. Circadian rhythm sleeping is number one. Diet is number one with that. They're both number one. They're just basically, if you've got poor sleep, you're not going to really have good health. If you've got poor diet, you're not going to really have good health. And those are really the two major things. And the other ones are sort of bonuses, Joe, the bonuses. Yep, last image on the career was older, enjoying goat brain, but the kids eating big servings of potato chips. Yeah, that's the thing. That is exactly the thing. It's like me. I was eating, seed oiled, cooking up chips and fish fingers, which is those little fish with batter, fish fingers. And my dad, right next to me, was basically eating some traditional Greek food that he had made. I remember once I was eating that sort of shit, and he was eating organ meats that he had made in a kukurezi thing like that, and tried to offering to me to eat some of these organ meats, and I was going, "Ooh, I'm not going to eat that," as a child, as a younger person. So yeah, look, I've experienced that myself with my father. So yeah, it's definitely a very different world now, and that's the problem. There's these people go around. It's misinformation. That person who got to the 90s or 100 or whatever, what were they really eating all through their life is a very different thing than what people are currently eating. And so you can't look at the current eating patterns. And these people are not intelligent on food stuff. So an older person now, who most of their life never ate any of this crap, now in their 90s or close to their hundreds, is eating some of this crap. That doesn't mean that that's healthy. It never existed in the past when they were growing up. They were in a rural area. There were no stores around. They just ate what they produced themselves. Now they could go and buy at the stores. Even some of the Inuit could buy in the 1940s stuff from the stores. At that point, once you've got a store nearby, as Western A. Price noticed, the moment a store appears and foods of civilization, as he called them, appear in that locality, people's health starts declining. So, all bets are off after that stage. And that's the reality. Yeah, exactly. What you noticed there is exactly what I noticed myself from growing up, and other people. And so I even remember my grandfather, when I'd go to the village and he's eating there, kukurezi. I turn up and he's got a glass of wine in his one hand, and he's actually eating organ meats in the other. On a cooked on a over coal, and they cut little bits off, that amount wide, and you put it on there with a couple of olives, and that's what he was eating. So, and he had a bit of cheese, a bit of, it was goat cheese, because our area produces a lot of goat cheese, and a bit of goat cheese, couple of olives, and pretty much the cucurezzi and his wine. That's what he was consuming, because that's what I saw. That was my first impression of my grandfather. But you don't think about it. Years later, you go, and then you actually remember this stuff and you go, oh, shit, that's what he was eating, wasn't he? And that's the problem that a lot of us, there's this, we can't even remember what we ate last week, let alone, many cases. And we have this disconnect between time. So people only know what now. You go back, you see some of the old movies or some of the old shows of people in the 1960s in Australia, as an example. And people were eating tripe and eating organ meats in Australia in the 1960s. And then you hit 1970s where all the new processed foods start appearing, and people walk away from all these because now they want to be modern. So things change quite a bit. And that's the thing, we all want to be modern. And yes, that's nasty. Yeah, look, this is the problem. This is the problem that I've always said. People sometimes struggle, with the food options. We've grown up to eat inappropriately. We eat not for, how can I put it? We eat for enjoyment. We don't eat to feed our bodies with nutrients. See, tribal people try to maximize the nutrients they can get because they don't know when they're going to have another feed again. So they're trying to get nutrients in. So they'll eat plenty of meat, because they may go without food for, or just get a small animal and have a bit of meat here and there amongst themselves and be undernourished for 2 days until they can hit a bigger animal again. And so when you're in that sort of food environment, it's a very, your food intake is like that, up and down, all over the place. We live in a food environment where you just have to walk into a supermarket, everything's there. And, when you're having meat, beef and eggs every day, and you see another guy having a bit of chips and a bit of this and a bit of that and chocolate and ice cream and whatever, you're in a food environment that is so toxic that it's really hard to stay consistent, But the problem is that most of these foods are not only, forget about the Randall cycle at this stage. Yes, the Randall cycle can be activated when you add sugar and fat and all that. But these foods are actually directly toxic to the mitochondria because they've got seed oils. And most processed food now, nearly 90% of it, has got seed oils. It's probably about 5 to 10%, depending on which country you're talking about, that doesn't have any oils in any of the processed food. And when you have that level, and remember, the safe zone for deuterium is 130 parts per million. Fat and all that is below that. Olive oil is at 130. Carbohydrates are in the 150 to 160. Some carbohydrates can be down to like berries and stuff like that can be down to the low 140s. That's why they're not as bad in a sense. And some vegetables can even be lower to the, like green vegetables and all that, they can be lower because of the UV radiation hitting the leaves and reducing the deuterium in the water molecules within the leaves of those plants. That's why green plants, they've got a lot of anti-nutrients. They're also deuterium depleted in comparison to others, but they provide bugger all nutrition and all that. They're not food. They're good for grazing animals to get deuterium depleted, which then the bacteria can ferment. But for humans, they're not food in my classification. But pretty much everything else is going to have high deuterium. And when it comes to seed oils, it gets as high as 255 parts per million. Now, at around the 104, if you consume a small amount of carbohydrates in around 150 to 160 mark, you've got enough enzymes within the Krebs cycle to basically deteriorate, remove those ions and replace them with hydrogen ions. Get rid of the deuterium stuff, and then that can be urinated out. That's why urine, depending on how much deuterium you're taking in the diet, can actually go up in terms of deuterium levels. So anybody drinking urine, don't do it. You're actually putting deuterium back into your body. So the deuterium, while in some tissue types does play has a growth factor, in others it's not a good thing. And in mitochondria, it damages them, which means it reduces over time your mitochondrial density. Reducing your mitochondrial density will mean that you will become weaker and weaker with less energy as you grow older and become more frailer, and you will die younger. Simple as that. Now, the deuterium content of seed oils is 255 parts per million. It's too high, and especially with most Westerners that are consuming anywhere between 30 to 40% of their energy intake is coming from these oils in processed food primarily. You're doing a lot of damage to your cellular, structures throughout your body. And there's no amount of capacity for the body to deplete. So you will cause a lot of mitochondrial damage. That's why I say seed oils are the worst. Processed food is full of seed oils, and the problem is a lot of people go, complain about this. I don't want this and all that. Well, they'll end up going for fried food in seed oils in most countries, unless you're in Southeast Asia where there may be some coconut use or palm oil, which is less problematic. But if they're refined versions, especially of palm oil, they're the lipids, there you'll have, when they're refined oils, the deuterium level goes up. So even those oils are problematic. But if the tropical oils are organic, or in particular, if they are basically non-refined, so extra virgin, cold pressed or stuff like that, those oils are less problematic, those tropical oils. But once they get refined, you do get a more deuterium in them. And most of the oils used, even when they use palm oil, it primarily is refined for stability. So that's a problem. So pretty much the whole food supply, anything coming out of a factory that's in a box, you can consider a high deuterium food that will damage your mitochondria. The problem is a lot of people, they incorporate too much of these, what I call treats. So they go and get the Atkins treat bar, which has got palm oil and stuff like that and oils in there. So basically they have a low carbohydrate thing and they go, oh, I'm having a cheat, but it's a low carbohydrate cheat. It's an Atkins bar, but they ignore the seed oil. They ignore the damage to their mitochondria. And so over time, over a number of years, they go, oh, this diet isn't working for me. I wonder what could be, maybe all those cheats that you're putting in are the problem. That's the thing, that we don't want to be honest with ourselves. I don't care what you do. It's your body. If you want to eat these bars, you want to have these snacks, fine. But at least I'm providing you the information to know why you're going to be feeling crappy later on and why you're going to be deteriorating later on. It's not your diet. It's basically all the cheats and other things that you put in because you can't give up on a number of addictions of the modern processed food environment. And I'm just as guilty because, I've just recently been able to coax myself off ice cream, commercial ice cream, and keep away from it. So I haven't had ice cream for some time now. So it's been a difficult struggle for me. So I know where people are coming from. So yeah, add bacon, Richard. Yes, you could add bacon. It'll be there. Look, there are carnivores out there. I don't do this shit, but there are carnivores out there that show different meal preparations, stuff like that. You can make soups. You don't have to eat beef and eggs every day, like steak and eggs. Make a soup, make a fish soup or make a chicken soup and put in, some crustaceans and put in some, some lovely, butter in it to give it a beautiful, buttery, creamy taste. There's a lot of things that my sister does, my younger sister. I've talked about this before, where she uses, she either does a fish type thing, or she does like a chicken type soup, or so it's sort of she'll cook it up, and then basically what she'll do is she'll beat a couple of eggs. She'll put the actual warm water from the actual soup into the egg mix, slowly beating it to bring it up to the same temperature, because you don't want to, otherwise egg will solidify. If it's it'll cook. You don't want that. You want it just to be brought up to the same temperature, and then you add it, and you stir it and into the soup, and you create this eggy type soup. So there's a lot of things people can do. You can actually remember the pork rinds that I talk about on iHerb that have got like those pork rind sort of stuff. You can get that sort of stuff, and you can use beat an egg. Like, this is what Hello Kitty actually taught me. You can beat an egg and then just put basically the fish or the chicken breasts, or even meats, even like steaks. You can actually put them into this mixture of egg, and you've got all egg around it. Then you've got a tray where you've got a whole lot of this pork rind. You can get it on all around the actual meat, and then fry it, so you can get that golden brown color just for a short amount of time on both sides. And also for it to sort of solidify with the egg and the rind around the actual meat, and then put it in the oven to oven bake it slowly. Wow, is it nice? So there are a whole lot of different things we can do to make so it's not a standard steak and egg type thing. If you want variety, I enjoy variety. So to do a lot of different combinations, I'll basically do omelets. I'll beat a whole lot of eggs, put it in. I'll throw in, I'll cook up, for instance, small little like squares of bacon, and then I'll also grate a whole lot of cheese, and I will basically combine this really fine grated cheese together with the actual bacon, and actually make this bacon parmesan type omelet. I love it. Can be making me hungry right now, but there's a lot of things you can do to make food interesting on a carnivore diet. You don't have to eat beef and eggs all the time, because some people can find that boring, especially if you come from from Brazil, countries like that, Greece, Italy. We've grown up with a lot of spices and stuff like that, and you can add some spices as well to basically give that flavor that you've always enjoyed. So I'd rather people have a few spices here or there, rather than basically giving up on that lifestyle, because ultimately it will be beneficial for them long term health wise. So yeah. And I did forgot to mention earlier that the Mr. Baby, he's Chinese background from Hong Kong. He couldn't tolerate, but now he can tolerate dairy. The key for that, rebuilt the gut microbiome to put more lactobacillus. Now he can tolerate dairy. So he was quite surprised as well. Yes. Bring back those beneficial things. A lot of things can actually cause heart pain. There's a lot of things that can actually cause it. So it's not, I was getting after my cardiovascular thing, years later, like I get where they actually cut me open, I was getting some pain there and all that, and that was nothing because I actually got myself checked, and it was a non-issue. So I've had a whole lot of false scares as well. So unless you've actually got circulating certain types of breakdown products, that they will know that you've had some sort of incident. Yeah, but we need to remember that none of us, all of us have just recently come to this lifestyle. We've got a lot of accumulated damage, and that will take decades to reverse, because it takes decades to do, takes decades to reverse. For me to get rid of all my fibrosis in my heart, it took me a decade from when I had the operation. So it was only the recent scan that actually showed, the fibrosis. That's why I got discharged by the cardiologist as well. So I'm out of the system, because basically they say you've got no problems. We've checked you and all that. The only thing I have to deal now with is, which I've brought it down from high levels down 18%, just the left lung. So, and that seems to be much better now. So I can actually still go up the hillside and all that way. And yes. Yeah, look, a lot of those sort of things are are a problem. So they're not a long-term solution in that regard. Yeah. But you've been consuming a lot of seed oils like I was, and a lot of indiscretions for a very long time, Joe. You know it. And no dietary approach is going to alter that. It takes a decade or more to change things with a lot of biohacks, because our bodies are quite damaged. So I'll be doing more videos in the coming months covering on cardiovascular disease and covering on a number of things on what we can do. So look forward to those, and I'll cover quite a few of my own experience and what I did and how I did it exactly in more detail, because I haven't done that yet. I've been focused on people with cancer, which are much closer to death. But I will shift back to doing a few other things on other conditions like strokes and cardiovascular disease and stuff like that, because those areas, I need to cover them. I haven't. Most of my subscribers have had things like gut issues, so I've covered that quite a bit. And some of them, of the more extreme variety, have had cancer sort of issues. So that's where my focus has been. But you're probably one of them, myself and a few others that have probably had any issues with cardiovascular. So it's not a big group of my subscribers, but it's something that I will get onto covering, so I can provide you with better information on things to do and how to go about them, and what tests to be able to do at different stages, so you know how you're tracking, which is important. Crowdfunder yogurt maker for the chap. It's a skin disease, like anything. Matrix metalloproteinases, they're called. They are collagen-degrading enzymes that are generated out of the liver, and they are regulated by fat-soluble vitamins, and they are also regulated, well, not exactly the word regulated, but suppressed. That means the suppression of MMPs by niacin, which you primarily find that's the B3, primarily in tuna, pork, those sort of foods. You'll find it more. If you eat more of those, you will see improvements. So the key thing is to get the fat-soluble vitamins in, and the key thing is to get all the things like fructose and sugar and seed oils and stuff like that that increase matrix metalloproteinases. Each time you actually incorporate into your skin any of the seed oils, those seed oils get incorporated into the cell membranes of your skin. Solar radiation hits that skin, damages that skin. you actually get an overactivation of matrix metalloproteinase in the skin. You get an overexpression of these sort of derangements of collagen within basically the skin structure. Eczema is one of those things. So you want to eliminate that. You want to eliminate the oils as your number one priority. All oils, that means, which does curtail a lot of, I'm going to go out to a restaurant, because unfortunately a lot of restaurants are a problem in terms of food preparation, and a lot of oils are used. And unless you really can trust the restaurant and tell them, look, I want my meat to be cooked on a plate which is clean, it doesn't have any seed oils, no oils please of any sort. And if they're actually putting on the plate oil, even if they scrape it off, there's still going to be some there. You're still going to get a bit. The other way to mitigate some of that sort of stuff is a low dose jarrow vitamin E, which you can take. So if you go to the iHerb, let me just find it. When you've got stored PUFA, it takes about 7 years. 7 years. I'm not kidding you, because that's the turnover of your own cells in your body. And what happens is the low dose vitamin E, because you need the jarrow one actually has the full, because it comes from palm oil, has the full complex. That means has the tocopherols, the smaller ones and all that, and they penetrate into cell membranes to different depths. And so they can electron down to, they're like this little squiggly, like little wormy type things that penetrate in. They're very microscopic, but they penetrate in different depths, and they can electron down to tissue to stabilize tissue, including the skin tissue in that regard. And because when we're talking about oxidation of, that these fatty acids that can be oxidized, it basically means they're missing electrons. So this electron doning, if you're in a low carbohydrate state, you can basically recycle a lot of this, because vitamin E and vitamin C can become pro-oxidant, or if they give away too many electrons, and then they become less stable. Glutathione, on the other hand, when you're in low carbohydrates, it gets upregulated. That's your intracellular antioxidant, one of your master ones with superoxide dismutase. They can actually recycle vitamin E and vitamin C, and actually have the ability to refresh those electron donors to be able to do their job. And then that can actually mean over time you can stabilize this tissue as you turn over the cellular tissue throughout the body, including your skin. You can slowly turn over and actually deal with this sort of stuff. Taurine also helps, because it has an antioxidant effect, and it can actually help stabilize this tissue as well. So a couple of grams of that, or eating a bit of seafood and all that. Oysters are pretty good as well for that sort of stuff. Let me just. Nope, not that. Wrong one. Nope. So that's the jarrow. I'll just pop that into the. Oops. That's the jarrow, the low dose E. Should have put an E in front of it anyway. You know what I mean. And this is the only taurine that I do recommend. It's it's basically suitable for everyone: vegans, vegetarians, carnivores, anyone. So, and these people that actually developed the company, they also are all old vegetarians. And so it's a pure, it's unbound, so it's not bound to any garbage or any stuff like that, which is important. So it's basically as a free form amino acid. It has to be as a free form. It's a sulfonic acid anyway, but it's not like other amino acids, but it's this sulfonic acid, but it's in the free form. So that's why there are other brands that actually have free form, but they're very few. The majority are bound with other crap. So I do not, under any circumstances, recommend it. This is the only one I use. So I didn't take the AU in front, but that doesn't matter. If you, whatever country you're in, it'll revert to your country in that regard. Let me just save off my images because I do enjoy, I get a laugh out of the images that Lukey creates for me. So I go back and actually look at them and giggle like a little schoolgirl. Yeah, exactly. So you got to entertain yourself somehow in this world. Yeah, that one. And we are done. So yeah, so those are the sort of things that you need to, and obviously keeping your diet clean so you can actually reduce the matrix metalloproteinase activation. Some people are more, they tend to actually, when they in particular fructose, they tend to generate far more MMPs in their system through their liver than other people. It's genetics. So people that tend to basically generate more skin type conditions tend to have similar genetics. They just slightly express themselves different, but it all has to do with these collagen degrading enzymes that are not properly regulated and overexpressed. So what fat soluble vitamins do is they down regulate to the proper physiological, because you still have proper turnover of cells every day, but you don't want this being deranged. And unfortunately, this can be deranged, and people who tend to have these conditions tend to be more susceptible. These genes are just unlucky, in that regard. So you need to keep it cleaner than other people. G'day Phoenix compilation. Thank you. Do you recommend people who drink tap water instead of bottled to add trace minerals? I actually encourage people to hydrate with fat because it's low deuterium and not with tap water. You don't see a tribal person running around with water bottles or drinking. Occasionally they may have a bit of, from leaves, they'll use like ostrich eggs or emu eggs in Australia, the Aborigines in sort of areas that are very like desert type of environments, and they will actually, from plants which are deuterium depleted water, because the solar radiation hits, and the UV actually knocks out that neutron and basically changes and increases and lowers the actual deuterium content, the heavy water. So it makes it lighter water inside the actual plant membranes, which basically means that that water is lower in deuterium. So they will actually squeeze onto that into an ostrich egg like the Sand people, the Bushmen of the Kalahari do, and a number of other tribal people. But generally speaking, it's only when things are very dry and they may use a bit of hydration from leaves, which is low deuterium. But the majority of the time they are producing most of their fat from, most of their water from fat. So if you want water, you need to get it from fat. To be able to get it from fat, you have to have your insulin to be in the lower range. You only need it to be spiked with a big meal, protein meal, and then come back to the normal range so you can access fat, because that fat, those free fatty acids that are going to your mitochondria, are also going through the Krebs cycle, and that's where your metabolic water is produced. That's the water you should be hydrating your body with, not tap water. Now, for my coffee, I do use not tap water, but I use Evian Alpine water from the French Alps, and I only use it for my coffee. So that's the only water I take in for my coffee, and I have some Alpine water, and that's probably going to be stay there to that level, and it has been there for a couple of days. I actually had to put something over it so no particulates would go into it, and that's only when my throat gets dry after talking for quite some time that I'll use a bit of that. But generally speaking, it takes quite a few hours before I even get to that threshold. But today, because since my post-COVID sort of thing, I've still got a bit of, it hasn't completely gone away, so it's a bit of a nuisance, but I'm keeping on and just keeping with it. But anyway. Just one thing about trace minerals. The Alpine water is very high in trace minerals. You only have to do something. Put it in basically a pot. Make sure the pot is super clean. Put it in the pot. Boil the Alpine water. Then put it into a glass and look at the mineralization that's actually in the pot. You'll be surprised. You won't get that from tap water, because tap water has far fewer, because once they actually put it through the membranes and all that, tap water loses a lot of minerals, and the only thing you get in there is fluoride. Well, the body needs a very tiny amount of fluoride that it can get from the diet. It definitely doesn't need it in the large amounts. Not good for the thyroid either. So in that regard, I'd give tap water definitely a miss, and I wouldn't bother with trace minerals. I've only used trace minerals in the past, and I've used it basically. I was using it in that way, but I don't anymore. And I don't bother anymore with trace minerals, because I'm using this Evian water, tap water, and it does the trick. It's got plenty of trace minerals, and I get enough from my diet to cover me, because I do have some restrictions in that regard. This is the stuff that I actually get at the supermarket. 146 parts per billion in terms of deuterium. That's what it's got. The Italian Alpine water has 149, and regular tap water is 155. 155 is basically right at the middle of what most sugar is, where actually table sugar is 155 parts per million. So, yeah, if you drink a lot of tap water, like a lot of people do, you're actually putting far more deuterium in your system than you should, that actually even your body can deal with to deteriorate. So, not a good thing. Definitely not a good thing. Hydrate with fat like our tribal people do and the camels do. That's what you should be hydrating primarily with, whether it's from your own body, because you're actually lowering your insulin levels, or occasionally from or whatever you get from your meal. Anyway, yeah, lead can stay for quite some time. Selenium in eggs and a number of the seafood can actually create a compound which is good, which is also important because it's a cofactor within the enzymes in your thyroid. You need selenium. The two primary ones, you do need zinc and other things, but the two primary ones are iodine and selenium. So, and selenide is the thing that actually can get the lead and mercury out of your system. Plus, general, maintaining with good species appropriate diet, a good functioning liver can also help through the bile, and also with extra. Remember the bile salts? They if to be better detoxificators, you basically need, not from cysteine, but from taurine. You need basically the actual conjugation of the bile salts to be in order to remove the heavy metals from your system way more efficiently. So a lot of it goes out through the feces. So you really need, like manganese, up to 90% can be excreted out of bile. But if you're basically using cysteine, it'll be lower. If you're using basically taurine, it'll be up to the 90%. So very highly impossible to get manganese toxicity. So that's the difference between a species appropriate diet and supplementing the wrong stuff that, yes, that some people do because of poor, bullshit knowledge that's been put out there by certain people. Anyway. Yes, the stent, it went well, but I was told if I don't take these drugs, I would die. Statins, definitely not. Beta blockers and PPIs, definitely they're going to cause more problems than you can poke a stick at. PPIs are going to, proton pump inhibitors. For fuck's sake, these people are just criminals. That will damage your functioning of your stomach and actually cause you deficiencies and all sorts of. Beta blockers don't require. The regulation of your blood pressure and the blood itself is basically taurine dependent. If you've got very low blood pressure, very high blood pressure, brings it back to the normal range. That's what. And taurine is a natural calcium blocker that basically regulates, and it's not like a blunt instrument, like a medication. It properly, and also in terms of between the ions that go inside the membrane potential of your intra and extracellular fluid. So you inside just your cell and all that, it regulates how those different ions, because you need to maintain electron neutrality, but it regulates the ions that actually go into the right composition of magnesium, potassium, and all that. And so as a consequence, it regulates the blood pressure back to normal range. So you do not need any of these statins that are mitochondrial poison. That, so that's garbage because it affects coenzyme Q10. The thing that, if you want to actually damage your heart, take a statin. Take a statin, you'll damage your heart. As a short-term thing to stabilize plaque, because it actually calcifies plaque. To stabilize plaque, to take it for a year, like I did, is maybe, because it lowers inflammation, may have a benefit. I'm not saying it does. I'm just saying may have a benefit in stabilizing calcification. So it accelerates calcification in the plaquing area in order to prevent it from becoming unstable, the angina. So it stabilizes it. But beyond that, and if you're going to do something like that, you would do it for a year, and you would basically take high levels of ubiquinol, coenzyme Q10, So in the reduced form, ubiquinol, to basically mitigate that. But it does affect a whole lot of other biological pathways, that are below the production of cholesterol. And, it's not a good thing to do. In hindsight, I would have never done it. But as a short term, maybe 6 months, maybe with ubiquinol, but there are other better approaches. It's usually people that haven't found their feet, that are on a bad diet, a sad diet, that they will get more benefits. But you've moved away from such a diet now in the last couple of months. It would have been, you wouldn't have been at this point had you changed your life many years ago. But I was in the same boat. I was ignorant like yourself. I wouldn't have been 12 years ago having cardiovascular operation had I known. But, it is what it is. Shit happens, but statins are definitely not a solution. None of this sort of stuff are. And, that's the reality. But it's good that you're only taking the blood thinner in that regard. I don't know what type of blood thinner you're actually taking. They do have side effects as well. So they are a problem, and that's why I do encourage people to use L-citrulline. L-citrulline converts to arginine and it will actually then create nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is what vasodilates and reduces, it thins out the blood in a sense. Earthing yourself is also a blood thinning approach, which is much more natural, which means that you invest in earthing equipment to earth yourself at night when you're sleeping, like having an earthing mat. Stuff like that will actually thin out your blood, and it's a much safer way than chemical thinners. So do look into that sort of stuff and consider that. I'm busy watching Maggie Family in my background. The bird bath is owned by Richard Lorickett. I've got no idea who these people are, so that the magpies can't get near it. Funny stuff. Okay. I'm happy you're enjoying yourself, Kate. How to deal with excess horniness caused by following a species-appropriate diet and all that. Take some extra L-citrulline. That will actually give you a much stronger vasodilating effect, and you'll actually go to the next level of a species-appropriate horniness if you do desire. How to deal with it. God. You bad boy. Go and whip yourself and, do a couple of Hail Marys and stuff like that, and if that doesn't work, can't help you. Go back to eating vegetables. Almost backed out of the blood thinners, but they were the ones that said if I miss a day, I could have another. Look, the problem is I would have not had a stent. The stent is a problem. It's too late now. It's happened. You've already done it. So you will need some sort of blood thinner because unfortunately around the stent you can get some coagulation that can actually happen and increase, which is a problem. That's why I'm against stents vehemently. I'd rather somebody have bypass surgery than a stent. That's how absolutely against I am about stents. Yeah, so there's not many solutions, but there are other natural blood thinners. And as I said, look into them. Look into the things like earthing yourself and stuff like that. Other options, L-citrulline earthing, rather than the toxic stuff that these people provide as an option. Aspirin can be a problem. Yep. So at this stage, take it because you for a year. I did it myself, and then I gave up on it later on. By then you should have some stabilization, and that should improve things in that regard. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay. Conversations with Kate. Yeah, well, Joe's only because I've chatted with Joe in the past, and so was Bart, and he was struggling to basically shift to a carnivore diet. He was still doing a lot of, let's say, eating out and eating processed food and things of that sort, and the sort of regular sad diet. He was still doing a lot of that up until very recent. So obviously while you can get fat by engaging the Randall cycle and cause diabetes and other things due to sugar, the key culprit, they know this. This is well known. Okay, let's not bullshit people anymore. This is well known. I've discussed it. Seed oils are the problem. Seed oils cause this problem, period. Anybody wants to debate with me on that, I will rip them multiple assholes on this. I had my blood sugars were relatively not too bad. My triglycerides were sort of in what considered the normal range. My cardiologist said, "I don't know why you're here, Mr. Serpanos." He said, "You don't have the blood markers to basically have this disease. You don't have, you're a 5% anomaly." Yes, I was a 5% anomaly who was about to have bypass surgery, a double bypass surgery, because that's how blocked I was. Yes, 5% anomaly. So, yeah, the reality is the seed oils did the damage, and they knew it. They did studies back in 83 and 84 and showed lipid peroxidation. That's what caused oxidized LDL. Native LDL isn't a problem because our bodies have been transcripting these lipids for millions and millions of years in all species. I don't see a cow's LDL causing the cow any problem. I don't see an ostrich having a problem with its LDL. So why have humans just at the end of the 20th, at the stage of 20th century, start having cardiovascular disease? Let's not forget the cardiovascular society only, doctors only started starting their business around the 1920s and 1930s, when that's the period when seed oil production was starting to grow and grow. And we went from in 1930, they had 3,000 people in the US with cardiovascular disease. 3,000 out of many, many millions. Then 2 decades later, because the Great Depression meant that animal foods became much more expensive, people started using seed oils because it was cheap. So everybody started shifting over to seed oils. The military started using seed oils. And then the military also exported, seed oils to different areas where its troops were located. So they weren't eating the localized food. They actually sent to these bases abroad and everywhere else. So when the US was in the Second World War, seed oils were the main cooking oil that would be used for the troops. Plus, they gave them some cigarettes to add to their misery. But anyway, as a consequence, when Europe was liberated, it was grains and seed oil that was actually exported to Europe to provide them with food supply. So as you can understand, what we've had, that's when, after 2 decades, because it takes about 2 decades of consuming seed oils before you see cardiovascular disease go up, or macular degeneration, or any of these diseases. It took 20 years for the Japanese to westernize their diet before they started seeing the macular degeneration. Before that, it was believed that they were immune to macular degeneration. They were genetically immune. Bullshit, because it's not a genetic disease. It's a seed oil related toxic fats that basically cause this problem. So when you incorporate these sort of things into your diet, and people have been doing it for a very long time, including this guy here for a very long time, up until very recent times. And you do a lot of it, and it takes a long time, like 7 to 10 years, to turn over your old cells and to removed stored toxic PUFA that's come from the seed oils. Period. That's what it always has been. And all these other markers, people say, "Oh, I've been doing this or that or whatever," and I always say, "What's your exposure to seed oil?" Because only those 1983 and 84 initial mechanistic studies showed a mechanistic relationship between seed oils and oxidized LDL. That means an esterified, so the esterification where a molecule, this waxy material, which is cholesterol, it's a waxy material. It can't oxidize. You can't oxidize wax unless you're a crackpot, and you should be in a loony asylum if you believe that. The esterification is when these free fatty acids, stick to a molecule of cholesterol. That is called esterified cholesterol. That, if you stick to the esterified cholesterol, these fatty acids that are basically coming from PUFA toxic seed oils and are rancid and highly reactive because they've lost electrons, there's your ox LDL. There's your cholesterol, oxidized cholesterol. That's it, with those fatty acids that are combined to it in the esterification. And these people knew it. So what was their solution, recommendation? Because these people were doing research for this industry. And so their recommendation was to recommend cholesterol-lowering drugs in order to basically mitigate this problem. So you've got less circulating cholesterol to be oxidized. As if we don't need cholesterol, which, is part of our cell membranes, one of the most ancient molecules that required for still cell integrity and stability. And we say, well, let's just lower it, let's just park this problem over here so we don't have to look at it. We can't actually close down a whole industry now, can we? Especially when they're paying us to do the research. Yeah. These people are criminals. They should have been tried for crimes against humanity because they knew what was causing this problem and they basically hid it. And not only did they hide it, but on top of that, these arrogant pricks recommended inappropriate interventions to basically mitigate the damage that the industry that they were doing the study for was causing this problem. That's what pisses me off, and they continue doing this shit, and it fucking drives you up the wall. Anyway. Oh, calm down now. When you've suffered, you can get angry. Not a problem, mate. That was about the Zoom session. Don't forget, after this, I'm going to have to cook. I'm going to pop onto the Zoom thing and see who's there, have a bit of a chat, and then pop off, prepare, go for a bit of a walk, prepare a meal, then come back for the night session, the next one. So, yes, but you will find me there popping in, and you can ask me something personal in your own words. Not anymore. It just means how far behind I am. I'm really behind, aren't I? Anyway, I better speed this up. Is there anything? Yes, thank you. 5 weeks of therapeutic taurine use, 15 grams, made a lot of possible benefits in the general health and repair of damage accumulation over. It will help, but it takes a hell of a lot longer to basically reverse a lot of damage. You've got cellular turnover, 77 years. You've got a lot of things. But if you persist, and I know in a toxic food environment, it's very hard for a lot of us to persist, Dean. Even I struggle sometimes. I literally have to avoid certain aisles when I go into the supermarket. I go, no, keep on walking, Harry. I have to force myself to ignore, because we're all being brainwashed. We've all had some underlying addiction levels. And it's hard. I understand. I don't sit around pointing the finger or criticizing anyone, because I know that it's even hard for me as well. I've done a lot of steps recently to cut back on a lot of that sort of stuff, so chocolate and ice cream are out of the house. But I did have a bit of let's say, a mishap with a bit of cider. So, yes, and it was me buying the cider. It wasn't the cider saying, "Oh, I'm just going to come home with you, Harry. Let's be friends." No, I bought the cider. So I don't sit around criticizing people. I'm just trying to help people, provide them with enough information and motivation and stuff like that. And I'm even trying to motivate myself with a number of things as well. I'm not perfect, and I've never claimed that and never will claim that. The closer you are to a species appropriate diet and further away you are from toxins, the better you will be long term, So ah, yes, you were classy, very classy. Could have fitted in one of those old movies, the sort of futuristic movies, the way he was. No, I do not recommend any cycling off the taurine. Look, I tend to, with taurine, therapeutics, I like the high dose. I only recommend people do that for a couple of months. I don't want people doing it like indefinite. You can come back to 1 or 2 grams. Usually, a lot of people, remember, we still have a lot of xenoestrogens in our environment. We've still got a lot of like blue light exposure, and blue light tends to increase in the evenings our cortisol and reduce our melatonin. So by having, what I do is, if I basically, when I shift back to 2 grams, I usually take it in the evening. One, because it's going to help my detoxification in the evening, but at the other end, it's going to normalize cortisol, bring down cortisol, and amplify and allow melatonin to increase in my system. And some people notice it more than others. I no idea why. Some people get drowsy when they have in the evening. So they, other people that may be exposed to more blue light, to more, may have more stress in their life or whatever, they notice it less, So it varies with people. But it is an important thing to try and normalize cortisol and and increase, melatonin. So if you're going to have it now, if you're basically one of those people that occasionally wants to do a bit of bodybuilding and actually amplify the muscle protein synthesis and increase that, well, I usually say to people, take it about, an hour and a half or an hour before you do that sort of exercise, and split it, have that, and then the other part in the evening. And in that way, help improve your sleep, because that's another part. Sleep and nutrition are the opposite side of the same coin, as important as each other. So yeah, keep that in mind. But you don't need to be at those very high levels for a very long time. People that have got a lot of gut issues, they may have gallbladder issues. So I may keep somebody on 4 grams for quite some time, for a number of years, if they got gallbladder issues that are not resolving, like sludge. I kept myself on a higher dose because I had sludge. Where Dad, for instance, his gallstone came through the bile ducts, through the pancreas, caused him pancreatitis, and then sort of he was fine after. So not a problem whatsoever. He does 2 grams a day, and is much better for that. I've actually upped his levels currently a bit, and then I'm hoping that he won't be. He said, "I'm not doing a fast this week," so he won't do a fast this week, but he'll do a fast next week. So he's promised me. So I will be turning up next week to his place to see how he's going in terms of his fasting, just to keep him on, on track. And so I want him to do the 3-day reset this week, because he's got the the welfare sort of get together, the community where they get together and have like meals and stuff like that in the Greek community. I don't want him sort of missing out on his socializing. So I've said, yeah, fine, Dad, not a problem. But next week, if you need any help, and I'll just basically drop in and just say hello and see how he's traveling. And I won't do that on the first day. I'll leave because he does 24-hour fasts all the time. One day where he has no food whatsoever, which tends to be more than 24 hours. So he does that once a week religiously. So I'll just be focusing on going over on the second and third day just to see how he's traveling primarily, so just to keep an eye on him than anything else. Because he's not as knowledgeable, skillful, just to ask him questions just to see how he's tracking and all that. It's best to be if he's under my supervision, so I can see that he's not having any unusual reactions. I will drop in some Evian water, so he's not using, so for salt water and all that, I'll get him the mineralized water and I'll say, no tap water, this is the water you're going to use, Dad. So I'll go and buy him some, and he'll do it that way. So, which means more trace minerals and stuff like that, way better in that regard. Normally, I would, if I was doing a 3-day fast, I'd put a bit of taurine in, but we can't even do that because we don't want to actually protect those who are mildly senescent. We want to clear out most of the old immune system for him to recover. So that's the focus, so that is definitely the focus. Placebo dieters. Yeah, and that's the thing. I've known about Joe's situation, and so was Bart. And he was sort of struggling to transition to a more species appropriate diet. He had a lot of weight, and he had these sort of conditions with high blood sugars and stuff like that. So, what in the low carb community we would consider diabetic or pre-diabetic or whatever. But that's the, so he's made the changes, and they've probably, reduced the severity of his condition and stuff like that. But you can't reverse years and years and years, decades and decades of seed oil sugar consumption. It's just the way it is. I know myself, it's taking me, when I look back the last 10 years, I've become younger, and I look much better, and I feel much better. But if I reminisce back 10 years ago, after 2 years after getting off the slab, it was hard yakka, going hard, and I was doubting myself all the time. I just had to go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole to convince myself that I was on the right path and playing around with things. So it's hard. The brainwashing that we've had for decades is hard. But, looking into the N15 data that people like Michael Eads brought to my attention, and other things, and then Laszlo Boris with deuterium and a whole lot of other things like that. Then my own research into taurine that I did to understand how important it is and how, very primitive. I have done a video covering for about 2 hours long, covering taurine quite extensively on its importance within our bodies, about a whole lot of things. I did a chat with Pim Johnson, and that should be out sometime this week. So it depends on when Bart gets around processing it for Pim, and then then Pim will be able to release it. So I'm not sure when she's going to do that. And then we're going to have 2 follow-ons after that. One on taurine and sort of neurologic, brain health and stuff like that. And the other one will be on sort of, the gut nexus and stuff like that, and going into some, having a sort of a conversation where I know I've done videos here showing these pathways and those pathways and all that. That will be more of a conversation to discuss in a more, you could say, rounded way about a lot of the aspects that in those studies I didn't cover completely. So it'll be more of a conversation talking about and how people can sort of incorporate these things into their lifestyle to make adjustments to the way their health can transition. So that'll be more of that with Pim Johnson. So I do have a playlist with Pim that I've done a number of videos. These will be added to that playlist, so you guys can go away and check them out. And I'll just put that playlist on there so people can get it. I'll put it in the actual, because okay, now let me go to my channel. Come on, stop doing that. Okay, I've got 4 there that I've done with. So give me a sec. That's Pim's channel, and I've done 4 videos with her, and that's where I'll place the next one when it comes up, so people can go and actually check it up. So yeah, so look, it's going to take a while, Joe. You've got to be patient. It took me about a decade to sort of turn things around, to bring down. I mean, remember, mate, I had 100% glassing in my left lung, and a lot of fibrosis in my heart. Now I've got 0 fibrosis in my heart, and about from the 2019 thing that I did, I've still haven't got around doing the other one, the scan. I can't actually find the damn thing. I may have to go back to the doctor and ask him again for another script to go and do the test on my lung. So it was down to about 18 or 19% glassing. So it's actually come down quite a bit. That I put down to taurine. If it's down to, I feel much better. I can actually jog up the hillside. So I feel much better, in that regard. Now I just need to basically go and do the sort of final test to see, has all the glassing gone from my lungs or not. If it hasn't, I may do a 3-month high dose taurine, or maybe 6-month, and then try and beg my doctor to allow me to do another scan. I may have to wait for a year, because you know what doctors are like, they're only allowed to, I think, prescribe a certain amount of scans in Australia and whatever. So yeah, I'll see whether I can convince him or not. Maybe I can. Maybe he'll just tell me, no, you'll have to wait for a year, Harry, before we do it. But anyway, so be it. Yeah, bad diet and smoking. We know that nicotine actually causes endothelial dysfunction. The tar is the thing that actually causes problems to, a lot of oxidation, a lot of damage to your lungs. But it's the nicotine that actually affects the endothelium. Plenty of studies, and even mechanistic studies that actually show endothelial dysfunction from nicotine. It's the nicotine. So even if you're basically saying, "Oh, I'm using these, vapors that have just got nicotine," well, that's actually doing damage to your endothelium. The tar is not the problem. The tar is just a problem for the lungs in terms of lung cancer and stuff like that. It's the endothelium that's actually being affected from tobacco. This is the reason why cardiovascular disease went up dramatically. One was the seed oils, and the other one was smoking in the Second World War. And our incidence of cardiovascular disease, death, have gone down, but the incidence of cardiovascular disease itself in the population has gone up. So even though people are smoking less, it's the seed oils that are, now about, for the average American, it's about 40% of their intake of nutrients is coming from seed oils. It's a lot, guys. It's a lot. It's massive. And these oils are incorporating into cell membranes, creating a lot of reactivity, affecting asthma, lung surfactant. Remember, they're going in and incorporating into the lung surfactant. There, you should only be getting palmitate. If you Google lung surfactant, you'll find it's only palmitate and choline. What do we fear? Eating eggs, which is where we get most of the choline, or meat, where we get a lot of the choline. That is what incorporates with palmitate, a saturated fat, and creates lung surfactant for proper gas exchanges. It's called structural asthma, I call it. My sister had it, was on a vegetarian diet for 25 years, my youngest one. My oldest one as well, but she had a mild asthma, but not severe. And my younger sister basically has no asthma now. And even was a light smoker when she lost her asthma. That's the funny thing. Here was a light smoker who shifted to more species appropriate and completely has. And I also, because she would have had similar genes with me with the choline issue, the pathway for methylation, because she never checked the genetics, but I did, and I knew. And the moment that we upped her choline, all these issues started resolving. Fatty liver, lung surfactant operating properly, and she no longer has asthma after having it for 25 years, being on a puffer. Go figure. Exactly. Yes, species appropriate diet will resolve those issues. But yeah, look, Joe's on the right path now, but and looking back and saying, well, if I'd done this and I'd done that, too late now. That's history. He needs to focus on the future. Oh, Jared has been around, I think the biggest disappointment the biggest annoyance for Jared was he couldn't get access to raw milk for the last 10 months. So, yeah, he actually mentioned that in another conversation that I had with him. But anyway, that was in a email conversation. But yes, in that regard. But it's good to see him back around. He's been doing a lot of videos on his channel. If you look at my featured channels on my, so if you go to and look at my featured channels, you will actually see Jared's channel. Just go there and subscribe. And he's got a lot of videos of a lot of people, all the truckers, that were protesting. He's got all the videos in that period. And he's got a whole lot of recent videos with other protesters against the authoritarian regime of the Trudeaus. Yes. So do check it out and do support our Canadian friend. Pies swooped towards my head. I had to use a school briefcase to protect my head every week after piano lessons in Nora. Ah, yes. Ah, look. Yes, magpies they can be a bit of a bit of terrors. I had an incident years ago as well, but it wasn't as severe. It's sort of, it was just one swoop and that was it. And maybe I moved a bit quicker away from the nesting, and it didn't bother swooping at me again. But yeah, I've had that, So yeah, yes, the lift wing agenda. Well, it's been it's the bit of legislation in Florida has sorted part of that out at least part of the US, which is a good thing. Hopefully, we'll see less of that bullshit. Um, yeah, yeah. This is a funny thing. If you take a look, traditional working class people, the traditional left, um, is and even today, the reason why they didn't vote for the Democrats is pretty much because they've been abandoned. See, it's all these corporates. That's why there's no rebelliousness amongst the young people. They used to be always against corporates, even myself when I was a youngster, but getting out there and protesting. But young people don't do that. They're actually out there endorsing these corporates because they're endorsing the woke agenda and then promoting it, amongst, these young people and all that. When young people are more interested in getting a good job and other things, it's just bullshit. Next day, they just want to teach young little children about how to transition. I mean, give us a break. These people are crackpots and crazies. Absolutely lost the plot. That's why that whole, it's gone off the rails in that regard, pretty much. But unfortunately, you have parts of the right as well that have embraced the woke agenda. And it's only some of the popularists on the left and populists on the right that basically have rejected it. But they vary in numbers in different places and considered all classified as all bigots and are basically not listened to at this stage. So, but I think the silent majority out there, the large, overwhelming majority, do not embrace this bullshit. And they're going to lose votes, and they deserve to lose votes with such an agenda, such a misanthropic agenda and all that, and teaching young little children how to transition. God almighty, And at least there are some women out there, some women associations now that are basically rebelling against this, because they're saying, well, we've got a whole lot of men coming into our sports. We've got a whole lot of men, undermining our rights. We've fought for years and years as women to get more rights in society, and we've got now men usurping those rights that don't deserve them. So they're displacing us. So I can understand. I can sympathise with a lot of these women that they were outraged and all that. That we've had incidents in prisons where transitioning sort of women have basically gone into jails and basically had sex with other inmates and basically got them pregnant. And they were warned about that this would happen. We've got situations where women are not even safe in public toilets anymore because they've got men in dresses coming into the public toilets. So say no more. I sympathise with you ladies. Honestly do. Yes. Yes. If you had I can understand why some men basically even will end up using as an excuse, say, I'll transition before going into jail. So, got ladies, plenty of ladies that are desperate. And why basically be some anal probe have some anal probe nutter in a men's prison do something nasty to me when I can have a bit of fun in the women's prison by putting a dress on. So yes, shouldn't be giving people ideas like that, but it'll be like having a personalized harem. I can understand why a number of women are basically incensed about this whole situation. I sympathise with them, truly. Anyway. I'm just trying to, move ahead without anybody noticing. Trying to catch up. I am way behind. I do understand that. Anyway, you guys are talking about all sorts of things amongst yourselves. Oh, yes. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Kate. Please hit the like button. Just, ding. Or if you don't like me, you can always press the, the dislike button. It all counts with apparently, you can be disliked and liked and still the YouTubium AI will like me. Hasn't liked me recently. Actually, the funny thing was it rejected one of my videos, my recent video, and I actually complained. I said, there's nothing in it. And I actually sent them back a complaint. And then they basically reversed their decision, but it took them bloody 3 days. But I actually left it on hold. Because you have to schedule it, but I scheduled it a week in advance. And the moment that I changed the schedule and immediately posted it, ridiculous. That was the most recent video. If anybody's seen it, why? Give me a reason why. I can't fathom, is it just to be annoying? And if I'd released it then immediately, zero monetization, and by the time everybody watched it, very few watch it after, so you get nothing, no benefit. Annoying, to say the least. You're working at it. That's the main thing. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. And as long as you're working at it, that's the key thing. Keep at it, mate. Keep at it. Yep, good. David Sinclair recommends 1 to 2 grams per pound of weight for longevity. These people are going to be responsible for muscle wasting in seniors following recommendations. Exactly. It's a bit like, Londo, the other guy, another reductionist crackpot that basically does the fasting mimicking diets. I mean, we know what a fasting mimicking diet is. Just look at a fruitarian. They are doing a fasting mimicking diet for all their life. Well, for 5 years until they fall out of the veganerized world. They abandon veganism. Well, we know why, because they basically fall apart. Protein deficiency. I actually did that recent video on protein deficiency and type 1 and the reason for it. Again, protein deficiency. But if you use taurine, which is an amino transporter, you can actually improve uptake of protein. Something that these crackpots would not recommend, and something that these crackpots have not looked at the literature to even understand how it works. It's one of the most ancient of ancient molecules. Yes. Unfortunately, these people are what they are, reductionists. Yes. No sunflower due to shortages. Well, that's a good thing, actually. But I don't think these people are going to wait to get their dose. They're not going to go out and buy animal fats. You can literally go to a butcher and say, just give me all the trimmings that you're throwing out, all the fat trimmings. Do you think people are going to do that? Nah. The brainwashing has been very, very good for a very, very long time. Yes. Yes, they do tell you that. Yes, there's a lot of BS. Unfortunately, they told me that as well. And since I did take none of their advice whatsoever, and I did a species-appropriate diet and taurine, choline, and a number of other things to get rid of my fatty liver, choline, you do a couple of grams of that, you'll literally push out fatty droplets, fat out of your liver very, very fast. And you'll actually reverse fatty liver really, really fast. And things will get much better in your general functioning of your gallbladder, liver, your digestive system, the whole lot. So, yes, following the opposite advice changes everything. It's the reason why I don't like stents. And I have not found a strategy how to deal with them properly. I've come up with some ideas, but I, unless you do long-term studies on them, the only thing I can suggest to people is to basically earth themselves, find every single bloody way to earth themselves to reduce platelet aggregation, and so to reduce clotting factors, because I can't come up with any other solution other than that for people that have basically put stents in their system. L-citrulline for vasodilating, but that's, it's that combination, and that's all I can really come up with as a solution. I just think it's, the problem with stents, they just create more problems than they actually solve. They don't solve anything; they just create more problems. And nobody wants to deal with it, Joe. Nobody wants to touch stents. None of them. Any YouTuber out there, you ask them, they say, "Oh, I don't know. Go and talk to your doctor," because nobody's got a solution. And as I said, the only things that I can think of, two things, is L-citrulline for vasodilation, and pretty much, using earthing. But that's about it. That's all we've got, Once we've stabilized, calcium to remove it with MK4, but it still doesn't resolve, because there's still going to be some reactivity with that metal structure inside and your body. Your body's going to see it as foreign. And as long as it sees it as foreign, it will continually start trying to, patch it up and do this and that and whatever else. All you can hope is that eventually that it will actually get absorbed into the actual arterial walls, and basically tissue will grow around in the outer part. And as long as you're not inflaming, you're not going to create additional lesions or additional, problems. It will, and I would then go back and do like an ultrasound to see, is it inside and has, new tissue grown in that, so it's no longer in the open bloodstream to be as reactive. That's probably the most you can hope as a long-term thing. But then there's still going to be reactivity within the tissue that it's inside, the blood vessel, still causing some level of inflammation. That's where taurine plays a role in actually dampening down some of that inflammation. That's your only option, is really. There's not easy options, unfortunately. Yep. Yeah, taking K2 and vitamin D are good for a whole lot of other reasons, but you need to dampen down the inflammation, and that's where taurine plays a role. But yeah, as well. G'day, Wes. Filmed by YouTube link, so I can go plug for you when I finish filming. Yep, good. His channel's in my featured ones, Wes. So just go there and just grab it and use that link. Yep. Sounds like a plan. Love it all round, so I can actually move through this a bit fast. Yeah, basically. I just stir it quickly and drink it. That's how I do it. Dad puts it in his yogurt in the evening because that's how he likes it. He doesn't like drinking it, so he just puts it in his yogurt. So everybody's got different styles. I just stir it, drink. Then if there's a bit on the bottom, I'll put in a bit of Evian water. I'll stir it and then drink it to get the rest. So yep, yeah, please do that to get her back up to, so vegan deterioration. She does a lot of good content. Char does a lot of good content in terms of exposing some the lunacies that people are doing out there. Endangering their children in many cases with a species inappropriate diet that's completely contraindicated. We're seeing these young little children with a lot of problems, and I've done a number of videos recently talking about these issues of protein deficiency and the issues that they create, like especially if the mother's diabetic, can create much higher susceptibility to diabetes 1 and diabetes 2 later on in life. And that's what we've seen over and over again with these mechanistic studies. They're done on rodents because they've got a life of 2 years, so you can actually see the cause and effect within a mammalian system. Obviously, they haven't been done in humans, but when you give these nutrients even to humans in short term, like 6-month studies, you do see an improvement in the same areas as with the rodents. So, let's not forget that all mammals did originate from something like a rodent. These are not dietary. Dietary things are different because all species have a different species appropriate diet for themselves. You can't compare diets between animals. But general molecules and the lipids, they exist in all animals, So they move, they transport around in the blood of these animals. They transport nutrients. They exist in us. They exist in other animals. Slightly different composition, but they do exist. And so we know that unless you oxidize LDL, it's not going to be a problem. So, and it's the same thing with all this. And she's exposing these crackpots for their lunacies and garbage that they say. But unfortunately, these groups tend to really go after her. They have it in for her because she exposes their, misanthropic lifestyle and their misanthropic agenda. So please go there and support her. Let me just give me a sec. Oops, we're past that. That's her channel. Okay. Let me just hide this for a sec. So that's her channel. And as you can see, there's no, okay. So go over there and okay. So which settings are you talking about? Because you've actually put here, I just noticed, go to the settings, choose send feedback. Hold on. Is that in the community page we're talking about, or? Are we talking about under each other's settings just to send support to her? Can you, because I'm not really clear about that, because you said anyone cares about Char's setting, getting her channel back, please go to the settings, choose send feedback. Can you actually explain which settings, including? Okay, okay, include screenshot if appropriate. Okay, so in our settings of our own channel, so you're talking about, yeah, I'm with you. I understand now. So going under our settings here on our channel or down here, you mean here, this send feedback, and then basically have a snapshot and include screenshot. Gotcha. Yep. So do that. Okay, I'll do that after. Yep, I know what you mean. So that's basically what Bo's actually saying to you guys to do. So I'll do that after, and I'll put a message in there of support. So I'll leave this. Let me just cancel it because it's whining. So I'll just stick that over here, and I'll do that after. What is it doing now? Okay, sit there and do nothing. Okay, thanks, Bo. Oops, oh, don't do that to me, Streamy. Oops, bring that down. I've got maybe it's my sense of humour the way I say things. Spence, g'day, mate. Most of the protein restrictions they do is in animals, in lab things, usually restrict glycine as well. David Sinclair is Twig, who eats, she usually takes Ambien to sleep. But yeah, resveratrol. Yeah, look, I know. Look, these people, they don't have a species program. They've got, what they do is they have this understanding about this sort of, and all they do is what is called, they do bias studies, just reinforcing their own biases about these things. They've got, a scientist should have no view, should say, I don't know about this. I'm going to test this and see how it plays out and test it in different scenarios in different ways to work out, is this or not or whatever. So that's my my approach. Unfortunately, David doesn't do that. David has a tendency of trying to design studies that actually reinforce his own biases, and that's the problem. That's why he hasn't made big inroads into any other things. The only areas that he's made inroads is where he's genetically altered rats to basically that. Now, that could work in humans, we don't know, but that's not a dietary approach. That is a genetic manipulation of humans. So it's a completely different kettle of fish. So we'll see how that plays out. Or, we've had genetic experimentations in the past in cancer and many other areas where they went disastrously wrong and many people died. So, and we know that if you do the same reversions in human cell lines, you usually end up with cancer. Got it? So I'm not very, you could say, it may, because animals you can actually have got very high metabolic rate, like rats, they die very quickly. And so before you can even see cancer, you can see this reversal in age, but you won't see the cancer. Unless they do it to very young rats, and then you do see the cancer towards the end of the life of that rat. So, all they're doing is slowing it, it's just because of those factors. But in humans, if you were to do the same thing, it's different physiology, different metabolic rate, different way that our bodies work compared to rats in a number of aspects in this area of aging. And as a consequence, because of our aging differences, when you try and do that in human cell lines, you get very different results, and you get rapid, sort of growths, which sort of are cancerous types. And that's why they haven't been able to introduce this method into humans, because they know it would not pass an ethics committee, and it would be considered highly dangerous. So he just keeps on doing this sort of stuff, to reinforcing the stuff, to keep on getting funding, and hopes that he may be able to get some sort of insight at some stage in his life that may give him a breakthrough or find a solution, because he hasn't come up with a solution yet. But that's still, it's dietary neutral. It's not related to the diet. It's related to these playing around with these genetics and sort of energy precursors. But, and there's a lot of side effects when we humans try them in higher doses, because we've seen that happen. So it's, yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's primarily animal studies that show this increase in testosterone with taurine. I know that it has a myostatin inhibition, and we know that myostatin is related in some way, these genetics, these genes being sort of slightly silenced, and some other pathways. But it's still not 100% clear. We know we can do the experiment over and over again and get a cause and effect mechanistic study, but we haven't really worked out exactly all the pathways and exactly how it happens. So, maybe eventually we will. But it's a good thing for older people to boost their testosterone, because it's very important if they want to slow down the aging process and feel younger and more vibrant. So, and our biosynthesis of after 65 drops off the cliff in terms of our endogenous ability to produce this, taurine. So, if we don't supplement, we will end up, going down that curve a bit faster. So I'll leave that up to people to make that decision. This is not medical advice in that regard. I think the problem is inexpensive. Big pharmaceutical companies are uninterested unless something makes a lot of money. Taurine is no potential for huge profits. No, promoting meat consumption, fish consumption, or taking a supplement of taurine. Most of the actual, the early manufacturers of taurine were basically like that company that I actually, promote. which is an old vegetarian couple that developed that taurine. Specifically, there's a couple of other companies that develop a taurine supplementation for vegans as well. So it's there's a vegan company out there. I don't remember its name. So there's a couple of things, but there is no money in it. Beyond the supplement makers. The supplement makers, now that they know that the reason why they sell it to bodybuilders, there's two reasons. One, it's a myostatin inhibitor, so it inhibits myostatin and allows, for people. Concerta Workman, see you, mate. Thanks for being here. Sorry for not being. Come back. I will answer your questions. I'm getting down there, and or get in early next week, and I will answer your questions, or later tonight. But anyway, see you, mate, and thanks for being here. Thanks for your support. I just noticed Hello Kitty's here as well. G'day, Hello Kitty. Did we finish scrubbing down things? Anyway, I'll chat with you later in my break. So we're up to 3.5 hours. I'm gonna that's pretty much the reason for that. I'm gonna really quickly go through because I'm gonna pull the pin shortly. Unless I see something that jumps out of me severely and says, you must answer this. G'day, Dolores, good to see you. Then I will stop and answer it. Yes, they are. They are. Yes, exactly. I just jumped in. My Sicilian grandmother told me how they eat the whole sheep's head. Yeah, my father used to do that as well. They love the eyeballs. Yeah, Dad loved the eyeballs as well. It still does. Seriously, I would watch her eat a whole lobster. I mean, the whole thing, not the shell. Yeah, look, exactly. Yep, very much similar. My father, my grandfather, he'd be sitting there and eating that. Actually, my grandfather used to like brains from sheep. So yeah, he'd sit there and tuck in, so to speak. Yeah, look, people were very different back then. I know some of the tribal people in East Africa, they love baboon brains. So and oops. Yeah, good for him. It's good to hear that sort of stuff, that he's found faith again. Yeah, I've been offered. Yeah, I've basically, just the only cream that I get is in my coffee. That's about it. So, yes, it's been hard, Dean. It's been hard being off the ice cream bandwagon. So, yeah. See, there's a lot of things people can make. A lot of things people can make. I know. Everybody's talking about food, Bo. I mean, bloody hell. I mean, I'm sort of, because I looked at the time and I go, it's nearly 4 hours. I'm starting to feel hungry with everybody talking about food. So yeah, I was, because all I've had is I've only had half of this coffee, so it's been slow. Now it's gone all cold as well, and I'm going. I'm still going to finish it off, but anyway, I wish it was a bit warmer. Yes, eggs. Actually, I've got some the Easter eggs. We've got like the red Easter eggs where you boil the egg and then you put this coloring. You put it's a dye, which is a natural dye, comes from rock, from sort of soil. It's a natural dye, no chemicals or crap like that, because it's food grade. And you basically put vinegar in to basically stabilize so it doesn't run off the actual. So the vinegar actually forces it to absorb and stabilize in the shell of the, So Dad makes these sort of eggs, and so I'll have a couple of. So there's about 4 boiled eggs that I grabbed off him yesterday. So I'll have those boiled eggs, and then I've got he gave me a whole lot of meat, so I've got a whole container full of meat and all that. And I'm thinking, do I take that to work tomorrow, or do I? I'm thinking of basically leaving it for tomorrow, so I don't have to cook tomorrow. That'll save me a bit of time, and so I think I'll probably do that. But I'll have the eggs definitely, and then I think I've got some bacon there, and I haven't had bacon now for about 4 days. Is it 4 days? I think so. I think I'm going to just go bacon crazy for this afternoon. So I'm going to cook up some bacon and really enjoy that shortly. Then I'll have maybe I'll fry some eggs. Maybe that's even a better idea. I'll fry some eggs, and I can always take the other eggs to work tomorrow. So yes, I've been getting bloody hungry as well for that. Yeah, I actually put it. There was a Greek way of actually putting a whole animal on a spit and all that, and it's in English. They've got English translation. The grill guys, the grill philosophy guys. So I've actually put a link in the community page if people want to go out and check it. Traditional Greek way of making, putting a lamb on a spit, and how they do it. The temperature and how they actually move it between the different levels in order to cook slowly, and how they actually make sure that all the fluids are kept in as well. So the way they actually sew the middle part of the sheep, they do it perfectly, how they line it up and stuff like that. So people want to see and learn some traditional ways of actually preparing a whole animal, go and check that out. It's in the community page. It's the second or third video that I've put there, or link that I've put there in the community page. Anyway, strange for me. Sometimes I can tolerate. Sometimes, yep, can be the lacto. It varies. Taurine plays a big role in actually restabilizing the gut microbiome. So I've done a metabolite thing on that. But some people, it can be varied. Now, I know that the guy was actually doing raw milk, so there is a difference. So he was getting some lactase enzymes plus the kefir that actually improved the lactobacillus strains. So yes, it can. So if you can get that, very important, or try to use kefir to beef up your lactobacillus strains in your system, you will see more improvements on that front. Sort of moving quickly, rapidly through these. Harry, will be great, Harry. Yep. Yeah, that's the stuff that I was talking about doing the videos. Yep. Not a problem, mate. You're welcome. And God, I'm trying to get it to, it's 2:30. I was trying to get it to 2:30. Will I get through all of them? Will I put them all on the screen? So I'm not going to be answering. I'm just going to put them on the screen in that regard. And, so at least they are on the screen in that regard, everything. Some point I may have to give up on that plan. God, is that how far behind I am? I just realized how far I am behind. Anyway, guys, yeah, it's a normal thing. I'm doing the Harry thing, which is taking some time to answer a lot of questions. As you know, if you want to get your questions in, you gotta yeah, that's not the same. That I don't trust that brand, mate. Use it for now. Use it for now because anything is better than nothing. But you may have to do double the dosage in order to get the same sort of level of free. I'm not sure. It varies between product and product. The absorbability and stuff like that. I have not tested this product, so I can't tell you exactly how much in comparison to the other. The other one, the dose that it actually says is the dose you get because it's in a free form of amino acid. That's how it is. So it is exactly the way it's in the cells of animal flesh and the water molecules of the animal. Those spaces between the tissue of the actual where the water molecules, that's where it's held, and that is in that free form, which basically means it absorbs 100%. So I don't know about other preparations. A lot of them, when they've got a thing L-taurine, that worries me even more because when they put the L-taurine, they mean they've bound it to something. So it's going to have much lower, and it can vary between product. Go to eat, Uncle Harry. The food is calling you. And you'll get more replies later on in person, my dear. God. Sits there basically just giving me a hard time, sits there and she has a go at me. Yes, you big teaser. Oh, well, my dear, I'm not cooking those kebabs today. Yeah, it is. It is good water. It's way better than most of the other stuff around. Yes. I think I'm going to have to give up. I'm going straight to the end. Straight to the end. Just too many clicks. I'll end up with RSI. Oops. I just realized how much I missed. Oh. See, Joe. And you were saying? Yes. Well, yes, off to the Zoom. I'll be there shortly, Richard. I'll be there shortly. So if anybody else wants to see us at the Zoom, that you go to the community page, and there is the recent Easter Zoom. So we're just on and off that all the time. So for the next week, we'll be on and off until the next week. So occasionally I'll kick you off when I need to do a video, but I actually may even use that recording software, the new one that Pim uses. I'm going to play with that and actually give that a try and see how that goes. So I may leave the Zoom alone completely just for you guys to enjoy. So I will leave it at that. Thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to answer everybody's question, but that's normal with me. I usually try to cover people's questions. You got to get them early if you want them to be answered. I will answer people. So if I haven't answered your question here, and it's you need an answer in the comments area, ask me and I will answer. And I usually do that the next day, like tomorrow. When I've got my breaks at work, I'll go through and actually answer people. Or sometimes in the evening, if I've got a bit of time through the next 2 days, I will answer people and I'll cover everybody's questions eventually. But that's easier to do because I can just do a quick thing. So yes. Oops. Well, my dear, a lot of people want a lot of things in life. They don't necessarily get them. Thanks, Richard. See you, Tracy. Sammy, I will probably see you a bit early unless you're heading off to bed or doing something else. Yes. A lot of us want a lot of things in life, my dear. A lot of things in life. We don't necessarily get them. Don't worry, you'll get one. Don't panic. Don't panic. I'll bring one over. Anyway, guys, thanks for being here, and I'm out of here. See yous. Please hit the like button before you exit the building. And for those who are not going to be asleep in about, what is it, 3.5 hours, less than 3.5 hours from now, we'll have the Eurasian live stream. And that will be, and next week, just a reminder, we'll be back to the regular time slot of Sunday. That means yesterday. So we'll be back to that. I was having Greek Orthodox Easter, obviously, yesterday, so I took the whole day off. And we've got a public holiday today, so obviously I did it today. Yes. Stop complaining. Stop complaining and whining. You're going to get some. Anyway, I'm out of here. See yous.